We are going to shift public comment down a little bit because we want to start out with the town council interview with Aldo Cipriano. So with that being said, for consistency, I'm going to turn this discussion over to Vice Chair Ms. Malinowski.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Attorney Cipriano. And I'm going to read some information that is consistent with what I had read to the 3 prior firms. And I wrote it down just so that I would repeat myself consistently. So we're interviewing 4 firms for town council. 3 were last Tuesday night, and we will be scheduling a special meeting. It should be next week to make a final determination on town council. We are recording this session this evening, and it will be made available to the public as well as last Tuesday's session. So we'll be releasing those at the same time. To speak, you can hit the space bar to unmute and then again to mute yourself. We've allocated 30 minutes for this interview, 3 to 5 minutes for you to do an introduction, and then there'll be 8 questions that the 4 of us will take turns asking you. The 8th question is a wrap up that Mr. Healy will be asking you, and you should have about 3 to 4 minutes to answer that one. So just if you just want to pace yourself for the 8 questions. Would you like a 5-minute warning when you have 5 minutes left?
Like in court, like
yellow button, red button.
Is there a wrap up? I thought I read something about me being able to do a wrap up.
So
that's question number 8.
That will be part of question number 8. Yeah, it's a good wrap up question. So it's like your wrap up for.
Oh, it's my presentation as to that question.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So if you want to start off with your kind of introduction, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Greetings, members of the Select Board. In terms of my brief presentation and my background, please note, I am a graduate of St. John's in Shrewsbury, Boston College, with a degree in political science, and Boston College Law with a concentration in land use planning, zoning, and administrative law and procedure. Upon graduation, I worked in the district attorney's office on Cape Cod in Barnstable, and then was accepted thereafter as second assistant city solicitor for the city of Marlborough, advancing to first assistant and then subsequently to city solicitor in 1980. My law office concentration predominantly is local government law with a smaller concentration of private clients relative to commercial and business matters, together with the purchase and sale of real property. Over the years as town council, we have avoided representation of town residents, except in extremely limited cases, on the basis so as to not create conflicts. We have dealt with pretty much all areas of municipal law with a continuing concentration on regulatory enforcement, including zoning, planning, conservation, public health, public safety, contract review, defense of appellate tax board appeals, collection of delinquent taxes, and the acquisition of and sale of municipal land, together with general litigation in prosecution and defense of town agencies, and the issuance of detailed legal opinions based upon a format that we created in 1980 for city and town use. That format, adopted by the town of Southborough, compels public officials to think out a legal issue, submit facts and documents for a detailed written response, and when all of this eventually becomes a local ruling of law, unless and until overturned by the courts. Also, we have had active participation for 25 years in town meetings on parliamentary, substantive, and procedural matters. Assisting us in these matters, as may be needed historically and currently, and I brought 3 of the 5 that assist us, is first off, James Lamke, over here, a longstanding, highly respected municipal lawyer since 1977, who has served as town council, special counsel, and a hearing officer to various municipal municipalities. Currently, Jim is town council for the town of Hull. He is also the executive director, secretary, and treasurer of the Mass Municipal Lawyers Association. Jim has also conducted numerous seminars and programs relative to municipal law over the year. I have known and worked with Jim for over 20 years. Secondly, we have attorney James Scanlon, and Jim Scanlon is a graduate of Boston College Law. He was an assistant to the City of Waltham Corporation Counsel and has been a conveyancing attorney qualified to issue title examinations, certifications, and title insurance on all real estate property matters. Attorney Scanlon is also, and we have used him as such, a qualified land court expert witness on land use issues based upon title certifications. Thirdly, we have attorney Michael Tremblay. Michael is an attorney mediator with a military background in the U.S. Army, Office of the Staff of Judge Advocate, Criminal Law Division. Attorney Tremblay is highly specialized in bankruptcy proceedings before the courts and is capable of advice as they relate to municipal issues relative to bankruptcy proceedings on tax delinquencies, permit holders, and a variety of other interrelated municipal and bankruptcy matters. He is also an active litigator counsel in the courts of the Commonwealth. Each one of these counsels that I brought here tonight, at one point under our town council representation in the last 20 years, has addressed legal matters related to the town of Southborough. Their detailed resumes, together with my own, are all attached, and we perform as a team as needed. Also in conjunction with McGregor and Legere, Greg McGregor, somebody I've known for about 30 years, on environmental matters, and we've also utilized attorney Legere for the town of Southborough. So that is the overview, and to make sure there is no misconception, yes, I am a local town council, but I'm not a sole practitioner to the extent that I have a team. And I've always had a team in all the years that I've represented this town, other towns in the Commonwealth. So that's the overview.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
You can just sorry, thank you. And Lisa, can you read the first question, please?
Town council is sometimes called upon by the Board of Selectmen, other elected boards, and appointed committees to provide legal opinions about, for instance, interpretations of town bylaws, state statutes, or regulations or otherwise. Describe your approach to dealing with those requests, including whether it is appropriate or right to issue a legal opinion, what form the opinion should take, and how to balance legal opinion versus policy decision. What do you see as town council's role in the discussion of policy issues?
A town council, a city solicitor should never make policy decisions. That is not the role. I can recall when I was a city attorney speaking to a city council that my legal opinion might actually sway a legislative decision. So I learned early on that you have to be very careful that what you're giving is legal advice. The ultimate decision on the policy statement is vested in the government board. Legal opinions are designed to give guidance so that the appropriate town official, board, or committee can make an informed decision.
Thank you. Sam?
Okay. Please describe a difficult ethics issue that you've had to deal with during your representation of a municipality, and to the extent possible, identify the type of issue, what approach you took to address the issue, and how the issue was ultimately resolved.
I'm extremely sensitive about ethical compliance because municipal lawyers have to render opinions under state statute to guide others. So the most compelling ethical issue I had, it was actually not with Southborough, but I believe it was years ago with the city of Marlborough, knowing in a some form of a litigation situation, although not representing parties as they were involved with the city, I began to realize that the theory that even though it may have been okay legally under ethics to continue to represent the city, even though I had known these people, basically I took the view that it would expose a color of conflict. And the color of conflict issue is what I've continuously advised the municipal officials about, which is, can I do this? I said, well, you can do this, under certain, criteria, but the public perception of what you're going to do is going to be bad. So if you're just talking about, can I do it? You may be able to do it. What's the public perception going to be? It's wrong. You shouldn't do it. So you've got to use your own discretion. And that's what I did in that particular case. Simply don't take or make a determination, even though I'm perfectly permitted to do this, because the public perception of a government official in a conflict is long lasting. And if the residents of a community lose the faith in their officials, then it's difficult to get back. So don't take the risk. That has always been, and that was the particular case I had years ago. You're welcome.
Okay. What do you suggest that town council can do to avoid or mitigate legal risk from actions of town boards and committees?
Education, number one. The
Education, number one. Most, if not all, of the residents of a city or town, particularly a small town like Southborough, are citizen volunteers that offer their services not for compensation, but just to support the town they live in for the benefit of their families and for the benefit of the town at large. So the situation would be that you would. I'm sorry, what was the question again? I'm going off under the tangent there.
It's what can you do to avoid or mitigate legal risk from actions of town boards or
Okay,
committees?
and my theme point is education for these volunteers. And I've learned that most of the problems that occur with town agencies, boards, or individuals is a lack of understanding of what the limitations of their jurisdiction are. And I've had to deal with that on many occasions, and sometimes too late. They've just gone beyond the scope of their authority and we're stuck with their decision. So the first mitigating factor is educate them. And that's why on occasion, we've offered workshops and seminars at no cost to the town in an effort to allow the citizen volunteers to know that we're here to help you. If you're going to give your time to the town, we are here to assist you so that you make the right decisions and not feel that you're out in the left field and then making the wrong decision. And then you say, I'm done with this. I'm fed up with this. It's not worth it. So that's basically has always been my approach. Education first, so that you have informed citizen volunteers operating on town boards, understanding their authority and not exceeding it.
Thank you.
I'll just keep it pressed down. Hi, gentlemen. Nice to see you all. Aldo. I get a short question. What do you see as the most significant legal issues and or challenges that will affect Southborough over the next several years? And how will you help the town address those challenges?
So make sure you're okay. You should be over this space.
Southborough's challenges are a result of its geographical location. It's the crossroads of Metro West. And if you view over the years the number of issues the town has had, its development, both on a short-term level or on a broad level. When I took over in 2002, I was surprised to see many lots that were permitted to be developed that shouldn't have been developed because there was a misunderstanding of the zoning for the town as it related to frontage and accessible frontage. That was the first time that I had an issue. But looking forward, I think that growth, although the town is somewhat built out, growth or the restatement of use of parcels is going to be a continuing issue. Protection and preservation of the assets that the town has, whether it's neighborhoods, historical structures, which the town has done an outstanding job on, and I've been able to participate in that relative to conservation restrictions, preservation restrictions. The town's in the right approach in all of that, but you're going to continue to get developmental pressures, and you're going to see that on a continuing basis, notwithstanding the fact that the town has somewhat been built out. So protecting historical structures, continued preservation of open space, which the town has done. They set the pattern in the 1990s. And when I looked at the bylaws, when I came in back in 2002, I was impressed to see the provisions that allowed for the protection of open space. Every legal opinion I've had to grant to the planning board has always said, look and make sure that we have properly identified the conditions and restrictions as they relate to open space. And, you know, it's prideful to see that that was decided years ago, because that's way ahead of the other towns that I've seen. So I think those are going to be the compelling issues that you're going to see coming up. I mean, there's always, should you sewer the entire town? That's been a nasty little commentary years ago. And no, you shouldn't. I respectfully submit, no, you shouldn't, because whatever hasn't been built out will be built out. Anyway, that's the overview.
Was that last thing a policy decision?
That is just an open statement. You can take it for whatever you wish.
Thank you. Lisa.
All right, thank you. Please explain how you would address questions related to areas of law that your firm does not have relatively extensive experience with, e.g. a particularly technical area or complex case law that your lead counsel and or backup counsel are not extensively experienced with. If you would seek outside counsel in these situations, please explain how you expect to determine that this would be appropriate and how you would identify and select such outside counsel. Thank you.
No town council should be so proud that he or she thinks that she can handle everything. And it's the appropriate approach to evaluate the case with whatever counsels you have, determine if it is a specialized legal issue that affects the town, and if so, is there a professional out there that can either assist or do a better job by their qualifications in addressing it. So I would not hesitate to utilize specialized counsel as would be needed, because ultimately, what's the purpose of a municipal lawyer? To do the best job for its municipality. All right. And especially if you tend to live in the town and you have a complete devotion to your town, then you're going to make sure that you use whatever is the appropriate resources to defend or protect the town, and not be so proud to say, well, I'll do this, win or lose. Bad idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Town council generates many different types of written communications. For instance, correspondence with third parties, communications with town boards, committees, and employees, including legal advice and or opinions and court pleadings. Please describe your firm's internal document management systems for the town and your practice for keeping the town apprised of various categories of communications.
You always attempt to keep your town boards informed about every aspect of litigation. And in many cases, they have to be involved in guiding you or authorizing you to do that. And that's very true also relative to the executive board, which should pretty much know everything that's going on everywhere in the town, because it could adversely affect the town. So we make sure that we have a system that verifies as best we can, where documents are going, when it's appropriate to send documents, when it's appropriate to request an executive session or some form of meeting, either with the town administrator or the Board of Selectmen or another agency to discuss any of the issues that may exist relative to the representation. I hope that explains it. If not, okay. All right.
Thank you. Describe your litigation experience generally and with specific examples of litigation you have handled on behalf of a municipality, including cases resolved through judgments on pleadings, summary judgment, and trial. What cost control approaches have you employed? How do you balance the value of settling a dispute versus initiating or continuing litigation?
I'll keep remembering that. We have been litigating cases, particularly local government law cases, since 1979. I have an extensive background, as well known, on zoning, and one of the first cases decided under Chapter 40A was the case of Newhouse versus Building Commissioner of Marlborough, which was decided, I think, in 1981. And the issue in that case was exhaustion of administrative remedies. That case went up and made new law, but really it made law that was clear in the statute. It's just that the lawyers on the other side didn't understand it. And that basically progressed as a position in law, exhaustion of administrative remedies in zoning, which is valid in that case is cited to this day. More relevant to the town of Southborough is several years ago, there was a project being built in the city of Marlborough with access in the town of Southborough off of Northborough Road. And it was Fairfield. And two zoning board of appeals were addressing it. And it came to the point that since all of the units were being, this is litigation that I did in the Worcester Superior Court alone versus a battery of lawyers that Marlborough hired from Boston. In any event, that they were arguing that since all of the structures and units were in the city of Marlborough, notwithstanding the fact that access and the address was Southborough, we were entitled to nothing. We're not going to give you, we're not going to allocate affordable housing units, and we're not going to allocate mitigation. So having had a background with the city of Marlborough, I attempted to speak initially without adjudicating with the city solicitor at the time. And I said, let's work out an arrangement where we share this. It's in the best interest of both the city and the town. Absolutely not. And I said, well, you can take that approach. And if you do, I said, then I'm going to advise our zoning board of appeals that they should take a legal action to extract those units from the city of Marlborough because you get the access. That was the Fairfield case. It went up in the Worcester Superior Court. That was probably about 15 years ago. And Judge McCann in the Superior Court, who was a former town council in Westborough, had the case. And he adjudicated that Southborough was entitled to units, and I don't know how many there were, I honestly don't recall, and entitled to some form of mitigation. The Boston-based lawyers were infuriated and basically said, we don't understand the system. And I said, basically, welcome to Worcester County. This is the way it works. In any event, that's the most, I'm giving you the original and then the most recent, but in between, we adjudicate constantly. We also try not to protract litigation. If there is a way, once we look at the case, to do a dispositive motion, a summary judgment, whatever, I would rather go that route and save a lot of time, effort, and public money by approaching it that way. And to be honest with you, that works out in more cases than I thought would occur. So that's the overview.
All right, and you're doing fine in terms of time. This is the what was referred to as the wrap-up question. So take 3 or 4 minutes and give us your best closing argument for 3 things. Number 1, why you want the town council position. Number 2, why you think you, and you've described it as I guess an informal firm, would be best choice for the position, and what the town can expect from you as town council for the next year if you are selected for the position.
We won't.
I'm telling you, the unfair advantage that you have, if you reside in the town, some people will say, well, that's not a good thing, but if you reside in the town and your family has committed to a municipality for generations, and that's the case of my family going back to the 1890s in the little village of Fayetteville, then you have more than just a lawyer of the day. You get the one town council, you get one who's living in town, understanding the issues in the town, at the same time have the ability to understand that, listen, I'm counsel, I don't have private views, and I shouldn't have views that affect the administration of the town. And I think that you develop a passion or a compassion for your town so that you're energized in doing anything you can. And I drive through this town at least 6 times a day, every day, 6 days a week. And I do that with great pride because of the history of the town and my family. And I can tell you that I thought once when I originally got the position, how pleased my great grandparents would have been that they came over from the north of Italy, and bingo, would you know that their great grandson became council of this distinguished town that they selected. But I think that that's a quantifier that a lot of attorneys don't have. They're law firms, they come in, they bring in lawyers of the day. They have 5, 6, 10 towns or cities that they may represent. And it's just basically, okay, who are we sending to so-and-so today? Well, you know, first off, you're sending me. And if I need the backup for the benefit of the town, I've got the backup, not only here, but elsewhere. So that's the way I view it. And that's why I think that there's that benefit that can't really be quantified. It's just the person. It's not the legal expertise. It's your passion to do the job right for some town that you love, period.
Great, thank you very much. Lisa, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you again. So at this time, we're going to take a 2-minute recess. I make a motion to do that? No? No. Okay, we're going to take a 2-minute recess and we will be right back. Now we're back in session. All right, we are going to go to public comment at this point. If anyone has anything they'd like to say, they can come up to the computer in the middle of the room. Otherwise, we'll just continue on our path. Going once, going twice. Okay. Next on the agenda is the superintendent of schools, Greg Martineau, to talk about the statement of interest for Neary School. Greg, welcome. Vanessa will give you or Dave will give you the tutorial of hit the button. Vanessa, do you want to put, oh, his picture is on, never mind. Sorry, thank you. Hey, Greg, welcome. We will turn it over to you. I will mute my.
Use this. It's nice to be in person and online at the same time. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak a little bit about the MSBA program and the district's interest in submitting a statement of interest to the MSBA. So for those of you who know, MSBA is a quasi-independent government agency, and its sole purpose is to support communities around funding school projects. And the funding stream comes from a % of the sales tax. So it is every time you purchase something, you're supporting the MSBA funding stream. And really it's looking to create fiscally responsible and educationally sound solutions to create safe environments for our students. So the MSBA has 2 types of programs, the Accelerated Repair Program and the Core Program. Most recently, we submitted a project through the Accelerated Repair Program, and that was the Finn boiler. And that was a very successful project completed this past fall. And again, the process was submitting a statement of interest, getting invited into the eligibility period. Eligibility period then talks about the feasibility and the funding and then implementation. So as a result, that project was reimbursed at approximately 36% of the overall project costs. We also have submitted statements of interest through the accelerated repair program for roofs, in particular at Neary, Finn, and Trottier. But this evening, I'd like to just share a little bit about the core program. And the core program really is an entitlement grant. Well, it's a competitive grant. And basically, it's really to support the renovation or building of new facilities. And the first step in the process of working with MSBA is submitting a statement of interest. And a statement of interest just speaks to the needs of a particular building project or community. We've been working closely with the capital planning school research subcommittee on really thinking about how the school facilities fit into the larger context of the town plan. We've had some excellent conversations around the use of our schools, the conditions of our current facilities, and what the needs are and where they fit in terms of the town's larger plans. As part of that work, we did decide to do a facility condition assessment of Neary Elementary Schools. We had a consultant work with us and really take a closer look at Neary. And they identified some needs, the roof, the windows, electrical, paving. So there were some substantial projects in terms of the overall facility. And furthermore, we also are looking at programmatic improvements. So Neary has some good spaces, but if you've been to Neary, you'll notice it has 2 gymnasiums. It has a lot of space, just not utilized effectively in terms of the types of programs that a 21st century learning program requires. So this evening, what we're requesting from the board is support to submit a statement of interest to MSBA. The statement of interest is due June 25th. And basically, it's the first step of being invited into the eligibility period. So districts will submit statements of interest. The MSBA Board of Directors will review the statement of interest and decide if it would like to invite us into the eligibility period. And that eligibility period then goes into feasibility. It's a 290-day process. By submitting a statement of interest, it does not commit the school department or the town into any future projects. It just opens the door for us to be considered. And I think, looking at the needs of Neary School, I think it's good to get in line. It's good to see where we would fall in terms of the scope of projects being submitted across the state. And I think that it would put us at the town and the school district in a good position to see what potential funding sources are out there if a larger building project is something the town would support. So for this evening, as part of that statement of interest process, we need to show a commitment from the school committee as well as the select board to submit an SOI, because they do look for collaboration. They do not want districts submitting statement of interest without the support of the select board and the larger community. So that is why I'm here this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Just one question from me, and then we'll go down the line. So the school committee has already.
Correct.
Sorry.
The last school committee meeting, the school committee did vote to submit an SOI to the MSBA.
Great, thank you. We'll go, Mr. Healy.
Hi, Superintendent. How you doing? The timeline. Once you make a statement of interest, obviously the clock starts running. When is it? What's the next thing that happens?
So the due date is June 25th. So again, the due date is June 25th. Typically, it's a 4 to 6 month process for the MSBA executive board to review all of the projects. And then at that point, it makes a determination of who it's going to invite into the eligibility period. So it's a 4 to 6 month period where we'll learn whether we're invited or not. If we're not invited into the program, we would just resubmit the SOI the next year. So we would just get back in line.
And once the eligibility period is open, does it fluctuate? Is it a very set period? How
It's
does
a
that work?
290-day period, very specific and organized in terms of what's required from feasibility to looking at, there's a whole process that we would move forward with in eligibility period. And even though we would be invited into the eligibility period, a community could still say that it wasn't ready and it could get back in line.
So you can't just defer till next year. You'd have to
You
start
can't.
the process all over again.
Correct.
Okay. And there's an awful lot of moving parts with what's been going on with the building subcommittee. Have you all had discussions about how the timetable for this will interacts with the timetable for the various stages that you're part, you're ex officio, or you're actually part? Yeah. So obviously you've got a pretty good feel for how they intersect. If you could just give a sense for that, how that might play out.
Sure. So I think you are correct. It is very complex. There are a lot of moving parts. I think what our role has been is really to look at the town's master plan and to see where we fit in terms of some of the projects like roofs and so forth, and also how our school facilities can be used more effectively and potentially differently depending on enrollment and other resources that we have.
I guess the final thing is there, the statement of interest has got all words. At what point does a number get attached to those words?
So once we go. Thank you. Once we are invited into the eligibility period, that's when we start looking at the feasibility and the scope of work and actually a dollar amount. We do have a good sense of the capital projects through the facilities conditions assessment that we did. So we have a good scope of what those projects will cost over a 3 to 4 year period.
Okay, great. I'm all set. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. I've been following conversations at the school committee meetings and the school capital research subcommittee, and I think it's pretty clear that the work needs to be done. And so doing this allows us to get access to an important source of funding here at very little cost and risk to us at this point. So to me, it's absolutely the right decision to move forward with this. So thank you.
Mr. Dennington.
I don't have any questions or comments that haven't already been covered. Thank you.
Ms. Malinowski.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion saying, having convened in an open meeting on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Southborough, Massachusetts, in accordance with its charters, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated June 25th, 2021 for the Margaret A. Neary Elementary School located at 53 Parkerville Road, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5, the replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs. Priority 7, the replacement of or addition to an obsolete building in order to provide for all range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the town of Southborough to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Okay. Roll call. Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Thank you, Greg. So I think you're all set. Mark will get you the certification.
And thank you very much.
And thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
Put myself on mute.
Just take it with you.
All right, next up, transfer station rules and regulations for fiscal year 2020. Ms. Gallagher. Oh. Yeah, didn't have to do roll call votes. I kind of like doing those.
Yeah.
That's unmuted.
Okay.
Hi, Karen, good evening.
Hi.
Welcome. Would you like to give us an update on the newest 2021-22 transfer station rules regulations?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of change. We changed the date, obviously, where we had to everywhere the dates. We did change the process for the free sticker for at need based free sticker based on requests from Youth Family Services and some input from Selectman Malinowski. So that did change, and then we also did remove the replacement permit fees because they're just cumbersome and didn't make a lot of sense. And then other than that, I did give you the counting of what is happening with the transfer station, so you could at least see the finances. The money from permits goes to general fund, doesn't come to us. But if you usually use it to determine what your sticker fee, if you're going to maintain it or if you're going to change it.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Mr. Stivers.
Okay, Karen, I'm a little confused here. The numbers that you had in there, you've proposed the fees at these numbers. I guess, what are you proposing in terms of the sticker fees? We sometimes have conversations about, you know, should there be a fee for senior stickers, for example, and your tables there had some options for different ways to allocate those monies. I continue to believe that it makes sense that the general model that the town subsidizes about $100,000 of that seems to me to be a fair way to do it. But then within that, do we actually charge something, small amount relatively, for senior stickers and for replacement stickers? And also, we've had conversations about how many stickers do people, are they entitled to? And as I read this, there's no limit on it, which I'm a little concerned about. So it seems to me limiting them to, you know, 2 additional stickers beyond the one that they initially buy is not a bad way to go, but I don't know how others feel about that. So.
So that changed last year. We did used to have, I think, a fee for third sticker, and I believe it was last year, it might have been 2 years ago, that that came out altogether and it became unlimited. And again, because the money goes to the general fund, it's really the discretion of the board if they want to, if you want to subsidize 100,000 or none of it or all of it. So it's been standardized recently for the last, say, at least 6 years that we've done it, where the subsidy is about 100,000. We've gone back and forth on the senior rate, and I really don't recommend anymore because it doesn't come back to us. So it's such a financial, more global situation than just DPW related that we will enforce whatever the will of the board is on that. That's why taking out the permit with the replacement fee, that was just something that it oftentimes is just cumbersome for people, and it just seemed like it was kind of unfair. There are times when it makes a lot of sense because people just keep doing it, like they buy one, but when they're all free for each vehicle, that really stopped happening, right? So there was times when someone would buy it and then they'd be like, oh, we want to get rid of this one, we want to get this one. So, you know, and we did a lot of replacements. Oh, we wanted it on this car instead.
or replacements where it was, people get in an accident and the bumper's gone. And then they're like, they have to pay $10, and it seems like you're already going through enough trying to get your car fixed. So it doesn't happen enough that we thought it was, we're there at the office anyway, like it's really not costing the town $10. That was what our ultimate decision was. But again, we can put anything in and we can charge any fee that the board finds necessary. But I don't have a recommendation on it. I mean, what I would personally do versus what the board wants to do are totally different things, probably.
Mr. Dennington.
I have more, it's a comment / a question. So under the proposal you have here, there, so the senior sticker fee is 0, right?
That's correct.
And is that the way it currently is? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you present some, later on you have some, I was looking for numbers about just what would be the impact of if you were to, for example, have like a $50 charge for a senior sticker. I couldn't follow it other than that I see you've got 825 2021 senior permits. I just multiply that by 50. I got $41,250. And I understand that the Board of Selectmen that the town traditionally has subsidized the operation by about like $100. And I was just trying to understand how that worked into on slide 2, where you're showing the total gross expenses. I guess that's for FY20, and revenues for FY20, the variance of 179. Is that the right number that I should be looking at? I mean, my thinking was if you were to have a $50 charge for a senior sticker, that would cut into that. If that's the number, that should be 100,000, right? And you were to generate about a little over 40,000. That would cut into that number. About half, right?
Correct. That 179,000 is what the shortfall if you were going to try to cover all the costs, including capital and all those fees at the transfer station. So it is, and this year our rates did go up with Harvey, right? So we have some money that we weren't expecting to be paying. I mean, we knew it at the beginning of the year when the budget went through, but we didn't know before we budgeted. So, but yes, 179. So that's why we do kind of show this little piece of what the difference, if this more, so that back page is more, if the seniors pay this much, and we were trying to cover full costs, what would non-seniors be paying? So that's really, we don't have something of, but that's what you would do, yeah. Multiply the 50 by the 825 and take that off. If you wanted them to pay 50.
Okay, thank you.
We just never do it that way.
Ms. Malinowski.
Thanks, Karen. So I agree with Mr. Stivers about the 100,000 coming out of the general fund. So I don't know if we want to talk about having a second permit fee or increasing the initial fee and still having an additional sticker to be free. I don't really feel strongly either way. I probably would steer away from having a senior sticker fee. So those are kind of my comments on the price. Ms. Braccio, if I can just speak on the changes to the free sticker. So Youth and Family Services and Senior Center used to do the free sticker application, which is related to income levels. And so they had suggested that we streamline the process. And this actually impacts the Board of Selectmen more than those departments because it effectively increases what others are paying for stickers. So Lori Esposito was kind enough to come up with a form and the guidelines for this process. And I kind of look at this as similar to the rent and mortgage, where we could assign a selectman to review the applications that come in, make sure that they fit the criteria, and then notify DPW that this application is approved for a need-based sticker. And the reason for that is that I do not believe that these applications should be discussed in a public meeting. And I think that the criteria is pretty clear on what is required to obtain a sticker. So essentially it's streamlining the process, so it's not going to two separate departments. And then it's an electronic filing versus the resident having to go to DPW and then youth and family or senior center and then back to DPW. So that, and the language was updated in the document. There's just an email address or a site that needs to be updated if this board approves that new process.
So it's being similar to the rent and mortgage program. Was that a volunteer I heard from Ms. Malinowski? I thought so too.
So I'm happy to do that. That's I'm happy to do that.
Okay, you should have saw that one coming, Chelsea. You opened that door. Mr. Healy.
I think Ms. Malinowski's idea is a good one. I think actually your idea is a very good one too, about Ms. Malinowski. I just, and I don't think it's going to have much of a financial impact. I'm sure the numbers are going to be really low. You know, it's interesting that the number of stickers, do you have a sense, Karen, or maybe an actual number of the number? I mean, 2 stickers for a household, I would think is probably the norm, or pretty close to the norm. 3, I could see. Are there many households that are getting 4+ stickers?
No.
Okay, all right, I'm done then.
All right, thank you. So I guess Andrew, you and Chelsea have both talked about if the board is willing to entertain raising the price of the stickers. I know, Andrew, you had mentioned seniors. I would not be supportive of doing the seniors. I would, I think there's a lot of seniors in town that are, there's a lot that aren't, but there are still a lot of seniors in town that are on a fixed income. And I think for me anyway, that would be a hard sell. If there is an opportunity to, so Karen, just so I have this right. So the first sticker's currently $250.
Yes.
And then the second sticker is $0. So what if we instituted I'm just going to throw this out there for discussion, a $25 or $40, $50 fee for a second sticker. That's essentially raising the price a little bit, staying. I don't know that we're going to get to the 100,000. I'm sorry, the 70, 80,000 that we're at, but if we can lower it in any way, and I understand the recycling costs are what's driving a lot of this. We've been talking about this for a while. I think whether that situation is going to get any better in the next year, who can really say? So in planning ahead, and I think there's been more people home during COVID. So, you know, there's obviously probably more recycling and more everything than there normally would be. So I'd like to get everybody's thoughts on increasing either the second sticker or just increasing the first sticker to offset a little bit of, not necessarily the whole 80,000, but at least a nice chunk of it. So it gives those as well that don't necessarily use a hauler in town that are still paying for this through their tax rate. It gives them a little bit of a break. So we'll go, Mr. Healy.
I'd leave it the way it is. I mean, I'd like to reduce the 80,000 or whatever it is, but I think that's enough people use the transfer station that I think that it's a town recognized service, and I think we should keep it. In terms of the second sticker, I mean, we've got 2 cars, we get 2 stickers. I'd say 95% of the trips to the transfer station are one car, and it just, if somebody's out of, I mean, it's not increasing the amount of trash that's going to the transfer station. It's just, if for some reason that car is not around, the other one's the backup. So I'm comfortable living with the existing rates and the existing, if deficit's the right word, so.
I agree with Mr. Healy, I guess. I'm happy to leave it where it is and basically keep the subsidy in place there.
Should we adopt the rule that if Mr. Stivers and I agree on something, we should just stop discussion? It's not gonna happen very often, so.
Yeah, harsh.
All right, Mr. Dennington, your thoughts?
You know, there was last year, John Butler did a very interesting deep dive into the transfer station and, you know, stressed the importance of keeping it at a price point where people are, and, you know, want to keep going. So I think I'm going to go with Marty and Sam on this.
All right, thank you, Ms. Malinowski.
I have a question for Mr. Purple. Do you know the revenues that we've built into the FY22 budget for sticker fees?
Offhand, I do not, but I can probably find that out for you fairly quickly.
Okay, I'm okay with keeping it as is if that's the consensus of the board. I just think this is something that we need to monitor and see if this is kind of going to come back down. And if not, I think we just need to make sure we don't lose sight of it. And I know you've rebudgeted those numbers for FY22 on the expense side too. So thank you.
Well, I guess I have been swayed as well then. Yeah, well, I guess I'll leave it at that. I will agree with everybody and we can monitor and see if we need to make adjustments down the road. So process wise, Mr. Purple left. Do we need?
You just want to check on my revenue.
He did. Do you want to wait before we take a vote to accept the transfer station rules and regulations for 21?
No, that's okay.
22. Okay.
Yeah.
No, any further discussion? None. Do we have a motion to accept the 2021-2022 transfer station rules and regulations as written?
So move.
Second.
Okay. I'd like to do a roll call vote, so we'll still do that. Ms. Malinowski?
Aye.
Mr. Healy?
Aye.
Mr. Stivers?
Aye.
Mr. Dennington?
Aye.
Ms. Brascio?
All right, Karen, thank you for that. I'm gonna have you sit here. We're gonna try to move up
The discussion on the.
Did you want to do the
Oh, the fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I stand corrected. So do we have a motion to accept the transfer station sticker fee waiver form as shown in our packet with Ms. Malinowski being the Board of Selectmen representative to review the paperwork that comes in?
So move.
Second?
Second, hardly endorse Ms. Malinowski for that role.
That's right.
All right, we'll do a roll call on that as well. Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Stecker.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ms. Brascio. Aye.
So
As I said, Karen, we're gonna keep you up here. We're gonna try to get you here early tonight. So we're gonna move from other matters before the board, the discussion of the Flag Road HCVE reports. I know Mr. Linden is here. There he is in the back. He has a brief presentation that he wants to give. The members of the board have it in their packet. And then we will allow Karen to go through the paperwork that she provided us as well. So, Mr. Linden? Vanessa is going to share the screen. So bear with us 2 minutes.
Oh, see that.
All right, okay, we're going to take just 1 second. Welcome, Mr. Linden. Thank you for coming.
Thanks very much.
Very much appreciated. Bear with us for our technical. That's why we have wonderful Jay here for us. Mr. Purple, while we wait, do you have an answer from Ms. Malinowski? I assume that's why you left.
Yes, I just went and had a quick conversation with the town accountant. We level funded the revenues, the transfer sticker permit revenues for the coming year. So there was no change in our estimate.
Thanks.
Right. Thank you. We good? Yeah. All right. Welcome again, Mr. Linden. Thank you for coming. You had brought this before town meeting as a citizen's petition for the board to take a look at the truck exclusion on Flag Road. The board heard town meeting, so we're here. Thank you for having us, and you've done a presentation. And as I had said before, then we'll have Ms. Galligan come up as well because she had some paperwork. So I will give you the floor. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so I represent several residents on Flag Road. And as Mrs. Becker just mentioned, this was discussed as well at the town meeting a few weeks ago. So Mark, can you, thanks. She's wrong. Thanks. All right, so this is just a summary. This was approved at the town meeting. I'm going to go fairly quick through these, but the next one. Why do we actually need an exclusion on this road? So there's several issues here. For anyone traveling down the road, I think you're all aware it's a very narrow road, and there's several safety issues with it. There's 2 schools, Neary and Trotter, that are just adjacent to this road, and a lot of school children actually travel on this road. There's also several instances of issues that happen on this road, and we'll go through some of them a little later. There are issues also just some road noise and wear on this road. And I think the last point here is also there's similar roads in the town that this board in prior instances have approved for truck exclusions. So next slide. So what do we actually mean by a truck exclusion? So this means that commercial vehicles over 2.5 tons carrying capacity are affected. They're not affected when they're making deliveries. So people buying their stainless steel fridges won't be affected, for example. Motorcycles, cars, vans, and school buses are not affected at all. And also there will be trucks, even with an exclusion on a road, that can access other roads around it. The truck exclusion, I think, as you mentioned, Mr. Brecker, is also called HCVE, Heavy Commercial Vehicle Exclusion. Go to the next slide. It's governed by something called the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and there's a Massachusetts amendment for this. And there's mainly 2 requirements here. One is that there's an alternate route. Second one, there's 2, warrant A and warrant B, which we can talk about in a little more detail. So the alternate routes, there are alternate routes. The next one. And there's certain requirements for them too. And this is something that would have to be investigated in terms of submitting it to the state. The next one is around the warrant A and warrant B. If you go to the next slide. So warrant A is the amount of traffic on the road. Notice the word usually here. So usually is in the range of 5 to 8. And this is very important because a road like Latisquama probably didn't meet this requirement, but is still approved by the state. You also notice the second part of this says a reduction in capacity or safety. safety, as I mentioned up front, is the key issue here, right? As we'll see in the pictures in the next few slides, there's several issues that have been recorded and captured on this road in terms of safety. So this is something that we do not want to affect anyone utilizing this road. And warrant B is around the payment structure. We move on. So here's a clear example of a safety issue. So this was a blockage on the road of a safety vehicle, as you can see, right? So there's no spacing, there's no shoulders on this road, right? So just imagine that this would have been a large truck. It would just have been impossible for this vehicle to pass. Okay, so moving on, this has been mitigated already somewhat by additional signage and a reconfiguration of this road. But here's one example on Flag and Deerfoot, right? Where there's a truck, an 18-wheeler that got stuck and had to be towed. And this is just one example. There's been other instances where property has been destroyed of trucks driving into mailboxes, etc. Okay, so moving on. Here's one example of a blind spot. This is a safety issue or horizontal blind spot. The next one is another example of another blind spot, right? So just imagine you come driving down this road and suddenly there's an 18-wheeler coming down, right? That happens, right? We hear 18-wheelers honking on this road, very uncomfortable. Okay, this is one example of warrant B and road condition. And also, in order for this to be approved by the state, we have to meet one of these, right? Or both, right? Warrant A and B. The next one are examples of usage of this road, as well as the next one. You can see it's in a smaller child there, right? So school bus almost doesn't fit on this road, right? So when we have a large truck coming in the other direction, there's again a blockage on this road. Safety should go ahead. Sure. So warrant A is the safety issue, right? So a volume of heavy vehicles causes a safety issue on the road. Warrant B is a condition of the pavement structure, right? So if you have heavy traffic, yeah. And it's mainly warrant A that we're looking at here. Okay, so to summarize, or finishing up here, right? I mentioned up front there's two precedents, and I think it's even you, Mr. Dennington, had mentioned one of these, so on Gilmore Road. So in context, Ladisquama is the road right next to the golf course, right? And Gilmore Road is a road that goes from Finn, I think, over to Flanders Road. If you go to the last slide here. So these were actually brought up in 2011 was Gilmore Road was approved by the Board of Selectmen at that time. The arguments that were used by Mr. Colendon and Mr. Gallion were, well, it can be dangerous. There are vehicles coming around corners that you just don't see, right? So that's examples that I showed you on Flag Road that exists. Also, trucks that go down that road in that case have to back up because they don't fit. And I showed you one example, mind you, that particular instance may have been mitigated. So there's similarities to the road in question here on Flag Road is dangerous, blind spots, and trucks get stuck. And Ladisquama, narrow winding road with no sidewalks, and large buses and trucks traveling down the road put pedestrians in danger. And this was from the MDM engineering firm that did the analysis for that. And similarities again is around the narrow winding road, no sidewalks and pedestrians in danger. So that's a summary, right? So I'd like to ask you guys to start the investigation of submitting this to the state to have a structure solution put on this road.
Great, thank you, Mr. Linden. I'm sure a lot of our questions are probably going to be directed at Ms. Galligan, but is there any specific questions? And obviously, Mr. Linden, we'll have you stay as well.
Yeah, sure.
But is there any specific questions at this point? I think Ms. Galligan gave us a pretty comprehensive packet with information. So is there anything specific for Mr. Linden anyone would like?
This could be for either, I suppose. But the alternate, what is the alternate route that is being thought of? to some extent, there's a whose ox is being gored here. Because if those trucks aren't on Flag Road, they're on some other road. And is there a sense of what that alternate route might be if there is? Maybe is that your question? Or?
It is. It's in, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's in Karen's.
Okay,
packet, yes.
Karen's valid. Okay, great. Thank you. It sounds like it's coming with Karen.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Linden. I'm going to have you, if you wouldn't mind, switch places with Karen so we can put her in front. Oh, very well done. Yes, there you go, Ms. Rosenblum. Thank you. And Karen, again, welcome. I know you gave us a pretty comprehensive packet of information. I'll kind of let you skim through and you can touch on some of the things that have already been said. We'll open it up to questions. I know you have the traffic counts and you gave us a kind of a synopsis of kind of the path. So I will give you the floor.
So to answer the alternate truck route question, because we obviously don't want to send it down Deerfoot, the farther into Deerfoot and then on to either Clifford and Parkerville or continue on Deerfoot, the alternate route would be through Westboro. So we do have to ask, request that they give us permission to use them as an alternate route. The alternate routes have to go from end of street to end of street. It's not necessarily where your destination is trying to be. It's that how do you get to one end of the street or the other? With Route 30 already being an excluded street, so Main Street is excluded, and that happened way back when exclusions first came. It's like in the first set, and I think you just had to write a list of what you wanted excluded at that time, and they just did it because there's no information about how that got done. So with this one, it can be done. It would be the alternate route is 9 and then coming through Westboro and coming back around on Route 30 to the other end. I know a lot of people want to send people down Main to 85 and then to 9, and that's now you're taking a lot further on Main through our more residential section too. So going through Westboro is the better choice if we can get Westboro to agree. Just a quick summary of the Gilmore Road exclusion is Gilmore Road is a much different road than Flag Road. They are not even remotely the same as far as structure, as far as shoulders, as far as just anything that's going on the road. There are points that are extremely narrow for a long distance, not just a small, like get around a tree or, and the windiness is the same thing. But because the alternate route is continue down Parkerville and get Flanders, everyone's trying to get Flanders. That's where they're trying to go anyway. And that one I was in favor of, and I did, Westboro selectmen did agree to allow that because Flanders Road is a major road for them that they want to have the commerce on. I had nothing to do with the one on Lattice Palma, so I don't know. I was surprised that it got approved. I know Mr. Landon had asked me about it, and I said I don't know how it got approved. I don't know the answer. I don't think it was a very good case personally. It is a little bit different than Flag Road, but Flag Road does have the quantity of trucks. Most of them won't be excluded, as it says in the memo, but if people want to do that, it's absolutely worth a shot. When you look at the DOT map of the area, we do have a fair share of exclusions, and every time we do one, it does create problems for other roads in town. We do need to be very aware of the fact that Flag, Parkerville, Sears, Pine Hill, Woodland, 85 doesn't, I don't like to count that one, but and Newton Street, they're roads that actually take people from the center of town out, right? So we have so many cul-de-sacs on these few larger, or they're not large roads, they take a lot of traffic because of the fact that they do lead from one space to another, and they are actually through streets. And our lack of through streets in town does put a lot of pressure on the ones we have. And putting a truck exclusion on, that's absolutely something that can help to some degree. Again, it's not going to get a lot of trucks off that road because delivery trucks are the main thing right now. There are over 180 homes, I believe, on that route already. So they only have to be stopping in one spot to or they can take it to get to Lovers. That's allowed. They don't have to go, because no matter what, Main Street's excluded, so they're already on an excluded road. So I'm not sure how effective it'll be, but it doesn't hurt to try and see, and it's just one more thing that makes the road better. Ultimately, again, roads like Pine Hill and not Parkerville, Pine Hill and Flag and Woodland, the biggest benefit for safety would be sidewalks.
All right, thank you, Karen. I'm just gonna ask a process question and then I'll come back to my questions as we go down the line. So if the board wanted to entertain this, what would be the first step in the process? Would it be going to Matt's DOT or would it be talking to Westboro first?
So the first thing would have to be to talk to Westboro to get an agreement on the to use their roads as part of our alternate route. And if we get that, we have to get that in writing. If we get it in writing, then we just do the remainder of the analysis, which isn't much. And then we can send that off to DOT and they make the decision. If we don't get it, we might have to consider a different alternate route. I'm not sure that there is one, except to allow the trucks to use Main Street. So that would have to be something that the board would have to vote to allow the alternate route to use Main Street. And I will say, yes, Ladisquama, that route was Main Street's part of the reroute. So the board must have voted that at some point because that's what was put in as the alternate route.
All right, thank you, Karen. The only other comment I'll make before I get to my question later is it's nice to see I'm looking at the speeds that they weren't as fast as I thought they would be. So, Mr. Dennington, we'll start with you.
Well, I spent a lot of time reviewing this for the meeting and just doing the exercise where you do the alternate route. The study said all the two locations were. Press this button and hold this. I don't have a third arm to. Yeah. But I couldn't do the alternate route because Route 30 was excluded, right? But the compelling point to me was that since the this exclusion would not apply to a delivery truck or it wouldn't apply to a landscape truck, right? Because that's going to the location. It really would only be aimed at really big trucks. And if you were going from Westboro east, I mean, you can use Route 9 or Route 85, and those aren't excluded roads. So if you were like a very big truck, should you be allowed to use Flag Road to like cut through traffic to kind of instead of go from Route 9 to Route 85? I mean, I can see some benefit to taking the trucks off and putting them back onto Route 9 or Route 85, which are roads which are more well suited to that. So I think I do see some benefit in this. And it was strange that the example of the road I thought about is actually not on the map. In the study in Oak Hill, that road's not on, it's not stated on the map either, but those are just, maybe it shows that the map needs to be updated.
All right, thank you, Andrew. Ms. Malinowski.
Thank you. So was it 6 trucks that would have been excluded during the time that you did the count?
Yes.
So that was over a 3-day period.
Yes, I think most of them did come on the same day though.
Okay.
There were 4.
Okay.
There were like 4 that day. But 6 total, yes.
Okay. So I mean, it doesn't seem like it's that many. I guess my question would be, you know, would we then have more trucks going down Parkerville, for example? And is that going to create an issue there? I'm just concerned that we're just diverting it to another road. And I understand that there's areas on Flag that are of concern, and obviously we want to address safety issues, but I just want to make sure that we're not going to create a safety issue elsewhere as well.
You guys out again, sorry.
And that is one of the current concerns. It was one of the first things I had mentioned, was that we don't want to just, when I was emailing back and forth, I want to call you Mr. Landon, but I don't know, is that your first name, Lyndon? Sorry. Okay, I apologize. When we were emailing back and forth, that's one of my concerns, is that I didn't want people just to keep going up Deerfoot and just putting more traffic on, because every street we limit, it's basically, it's water piping, right? You stop the water somewhere and you put more flow to another road, which I believe was what the intent with Main Street being excluded was back in the 70s, was that it would stop people from being able to get to these other roads. It's obviously not working. It's hard to enforce, because if you have business on any road off of Main Street, you can be on Main Street as a truck. So, or any of the excluded roads off Main Street, you can also. It does create that problem. But yes, if they're already driving a length of Main Street that's excluded to get to Flag, there's not necessarily any reason they're not going to go the extra 500 feet to get to Parkerville and then to Parkerville. Again, it's partly policing is very difficult for that, because all you have to do is be stopping at a road, at a house, or using a road that's off of one of those. And it's also labor intensive for police if they were going to do that. But I do know a lot of the concern is with Ken's trucks, which have actually been doing very well, not getting caught through that, where they were, a lot of truckers thought that they could make the left at, Crystal Pond to get into Ken's, but you can't, right? It's in the wrong, it's just past. So they have to U-turn there. And then a lot of people were diverting down Flag based on GPS. So Ken's Food has been really working hard with their drivers and any contractors to make sure that they don't do that they actually continue and use the U-turn, basically that's Route 85 interchange and 9. But it doesn't, again, if there were still 4 trucks, it doesn't mean someone wasn't moving that day by chance, but there were 3 other trucks, right? So again, it's just statistical as far as that goes. So that is a concern. I don't know how to address it. Maybe that's the best answer.
No, yeah.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, no, so, and I want to make sure you guys understand too, that if you look at Parkerville, it has mitigation in place. There's speed bumps. That road also has sidewalks, and this Flag Road does not. So that's sort of the main concern.
And I understand that. It's also adjacent to the schools on the other side, right? So you still have school children. I understand there's sidewalks there, but
Right.
That's where I was going.
Yeah,
the schools. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else, Ms. Malinowski?
That's it for now. Thank you.
Mr. Healy?
I'm assuming, okay, I'm unmuted. So I think I now understand the alternate routes, but there really have to be 2 alternate routes, right? There has to be an alternate route for southbound and for northbound. Because and can you have an exclusion for one direction and not the other?
I don't know the answer to that second piece. As far as, yes, you do need to get from end to end, just from end to end. So if if you were coming east to Flag and then gonna go, say, down Route 30 from Westboro, and then go up to try to get to 9, and now you're gonna go east again, you really would you just don't come west first, right? You go up and you just handle all through Route 9. So Route 9 is your alternate route, because you don't need to get to one end of Flag, because you're just trying to get to 9. So even though it is supposed to be end to end, the end to end is taking 9 into Westboro and then coming back around and onto East Main and Westboro, and then to Main Street and Southborough so that gets you end to end.
Let me just stop you there. I get that.
Yeah.
And now I'm not, I'm not sitting here as a member of the Board of Selectmen in Westboro. I'm not sure what the sweetener is that Southborough can offer them for putting additional large trucks on their street. It's residential. I mean, there are parts of it that are houses are set back, but it's residential. But that's, maybe there's a quid pro quo we can offer them to make them see it as a reasonable alternative. That to me doesn't. That's why I ask, can you have an exclusion in one direction? Because my first question was, are a lot of those trucks that are going through Flag that are going northbound coming out of Kent's? Because that's the first turn. And I mean, do we know that? Is there a way to know that of those trucks that they're from Kent's? Obviously there is a way to know that.
Right, there is.
Do we know that?
We didn't, this wasn't done through video, but it does give you the direction the trucks were going.
No, I get that. I'm just wondering if the trucks that are going north are mostly from Kent's, because again, that's the first turn. And if you are going to turn around or get going, even towards 85 or whatever direction, Flag, it's sitting there like a big red light blinking, turn right here. And there aren't other alternative streets in Southborough. That's the advantage to that. Once you pass Flag, you're in Westborough. So it's not like if you closed it off going northbound, you would be potentially diverting traffic onto other Southborough roads. It doesn't strike me. The southbound, that's again my whose ox is being gored, because if you block off Flag, whether it's Parkerville or whatever the alternative is, you're potentially putting traffic on other roads that have, whether it's school issues or otherwise. So I guess that'd be a question: can you have an exclusion one direction? And then we can go talk really nice to the people from Westboro, if that's the case.
I can definitely find that out. It seems like it would be
that's all I've got. Yeah, it strikes me that sure. I mean, if somebody comes to that and it says you can't go, it's not going to go, well, wait a minute. If I were coming the other direction, I could. Well, so what? Yeah. So I suspect the answer is yes, but it'd be nice to find out. So other than that, I'm all set.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stivers.
Couple of questions, Karen. One, I'm a little puzzled by the math that MassDOT uses for this thing, because it seems to me that the vast majority of vehicles that are counted for the traffic counts here for heavy vehicles are vehicles that are going to have access to the neighborhood anyway, for deliveries and school buses and so on and so forth. So when you really get down to it, the amount of large trucks that I think is the primary concern here, as I understand it, is less than 10% or about 10% of the total traffic there. So if you could find a way to manage that, I think that could be an interesting, at least first step maybe. And to Marty's point, I was sort of thinking in the same direction, that if you could find a way to limit the east or the northbound traffic coming west on Route 9, turning right on Flag, is there a way we could maybe do that physically by making the intersection such that an 18-wheeler can't make that turn, but a school bus or a fire truck or whatever could make that turn if they needed to somehow? I don't know physically if we have the opportunity to do something like that, versus use a sign that says trucks excluded. If they basically can't do the turn physically, that would be a potentially effective way of limiting that kind of traffic. I don't know.
That might be possible. What, got an echo?
I got to mute here.
That might be possible. I think, the issue with that is it is in the, DOT right away, the entrance and exit of Flag Road. So they have just redone that. The 18-wheelers, I think they get on that road. They don't want to be on there, right? That's sort of the way that happens generally. If GPS sends them, they would rather not have taken that turn and they don't do it again. I do believe we did put some signs up to say, you know, difficult turns and stuff, so that because we were having the issue at the intersection of Flag and Deerfoot. And so putting one out on Route 9 at trucks, like I do know people on Middle Road complain that the trucks are still coming down because the sign's on Middle, they've already turned, right? There's no way to kind of give it before the turn because it will look like the street that's excluded is 9. Obviously, that would not be the case. So
Can we put signage on Route 9 there before Flag going west to say, don't turn here effectively?
we have something on there, and I believe it's for I believe it just says like difficult for tractor trailers or something like that. So that's really what we were looking at trying to work with or exclude. But if we look at doing it just northbound, and then we look at a way to, like, it was easy in Westboro when we did Gilmore because we were able to say truck exclusion ahead because they had Gilmore Road continues right over to Flanders as a road in Westboro. So we had to, but they let us put the signs up. It's a lot different working with DOT roads. Not, they don't let you put signs up, but they don't want, you know, because we were trying to just get a sign up that says for Ken's, you know, go to the 85 interchange. And we actually, that's to them is promoting, like they can't do it for one and not for everybody on the road. So that gets to be a problem for them.
Maybe if getting support from Westboro for Route 30 is on the critical path here, may not hurt to ask and see what the possibility of that is. And if the answer is no way, then that gives us something to work with. If they say, yeah, we're interested in talking, again, that gives us an idea of what might be a next step.
Is that it, Sam?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. So I like Marty's idea of saying if we can do a northbound exclusion. Were you involved in the process with Westboro? Well, you said it was on Flanders and Gilmore, and that was a little bit different because that was the main road and there's already trucks going down to Cumberland Farms down there anyway. How extensive, if you know, was the process in trying to have those conversations with Westboro?
It was actually fairly easy. I will say I was able to just talk to the DPW there, put together a memo, and then at a selectmen's meeting, they just discussed it, but it made a lot of sense at the time. So there was not a lot of discussion because Flanders Road is one of their main truck routes, so it made sense for them.
Okay, and secondly, I guess I would like to know first if we can do the northbound. And I think that opens, it kind of gives us a path as to what we really need to do. I think it was concerning to me that in a 3-day window, 4 trucks went down the road. You multiply that out, if that's an average, it may have just been an off day. There may have been, Lord knows what happened, but you know, it's concerning to me that many trucks in a short period went down the Flag. And so I guess for me, the first step would be to find that out. If the board wants, we could do a general reach out to Westboro, or we could just get more information from Karen. I know Sam had mentioned, is there other signage? Do we have to go through DOT to get approval for signage because it is on Route 9? So I don't know. we could have a couple action items on this and explore some paths, or, you know, we can start some initial conversations. And again, I think for me, it's knowing and the concerns as well of where these cars are going to go. So I think we started a good conversation. I'd like to see it continued. I personally am not ready to make any decisions tonight. I'd like to get more information. Other members? Mr. Healy.
Yeah, I guess my inclination would be to find out at least those two things. Through the DPW, maybe, you know, who knows if the DPW person goes, are you out of your mind? I don't think it's worth it to try to, you know, go up a couple of steps. But who knows, they may have it. Again, it's not a residential road like Flag Road. It's wider. There are bicycles on there all the time because it's got, you know, wide berths. So that's a possibility. So I would take the temperature of the DPW and maybe get back to Lisa or Chelsea, and you all can decide whether or not it's worth a phone call to somebody from Westboro. And then the question about whether or not, I think the answer is yes, but I'd like to confirm that you could just do a one-way exclusion. I guess that's my view. Otherwise, I'm with you. I'm not ready to make a decision tonight.
Go ahead, Mr. Linda.
No, that's a very good point, Mr. Healy, to make sure that there's support from Westboro in case we need to ask them, right? But I think also when you ask them the question, it needs to be sort of like, okay, we want this from you, but we were willing to work with you in the future. Like one of you, I mean, Mr. Starvis mentioned, if you need an exclusion, that we will be helpful to you. And the second point there is too, Karen mentioned, if Route 30 can be used as the alternate route, then that would solve that problem because that's a big road. So.
Thank you. Mr. Jennison, you had your hand up.
I just have a question about the methodologies in the report. I was confused about whether the alternate route is calculated from the end point of one end of Flag Road to the other end of the Flag Road, because Flag Road ends at Deerfoot, right? Because the report talks about from the engineering firm talks about the alternate route from Flag Road at Route 9 to Deerfoot Road at Main Street. So, you understand my question, Karen?
Yes, and you're right. That little piece of Deerfoot's not excluded, but you're right. He should have said they should have brought it up to the Deerfoot Flag intersection, because technically that's now the end of Flag. Does that make sense? Or brought itself to the Deerfoot Flag intersection?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes.
So if you're coming east on Main Street and you take a right onto Deerfoot, and then you hit a truck exclusion, that's going to force them onto Clifford.
Or continue down Deerfoot, yes.
So I think that's problematic because, well, it's problematic either way, right? Because we don't want them going down Flag, but I don't know that the alternate is any better either. So I would, if we're going to do a north to southbound, I think we need to see if we can do it at the top of Deerfoot.
What we did when we did Latticequama was we have a truck exclusion ahead sign so that people know, and you can say truck exclusion ahead, no access to 9.
But if I can, I understand what you're saying in terms of it being the full circle, but if somebody is going west on Route 9 and Flag would be a cut through for them, and as a result they go down, they can't do that anymore, so they go down Route 9, loop around and come back up on Route 30. I understand that for purposes of a study you have to do the right turn on Deerfoot. None of those trucks are taking a right turn on Deerfoot unless somebody who's actually going to the Deerfoot Clifford intersection or something like that. So, I mean, the idea would be they presumably on their way to 85 or something like that. I don't think, because I think if they're going to up Deerfoot, they've got a destination there. That'd be my guess.
Unless they're lost.
That never happens.
And then all bets are off.
Yeah, no, the alternate route needs to be investigated, right? Because I've seen trucks coming, like you said, westbound on Route 9, going up on the 495 intersection, and then going back and going the other direction, right? So there's several alternate routes that might not even include going into Westboro or using other residential streets in Southborough. So that needs to be investigated.
So Karen, on that note, how does Mass Highway, I'm assuming, who would be, is it DOT that would be in charge of the interchange at 495? I don't know how they would feel about using 495's on and off ramp system of Cloverleaf as an alternate route.
I don't know the answer to that. It is DOT, but I'm not sure how that brings you end to end on Flag. If you take a right out of Flag, or if you go past Flag and you interchange back through, you're only going to end up back at the head of Flag unless you get onto 85, which then you have to take Main Street, which is excluded. So it would be back to where we were, where we'd have to vote to use an excluded street of our own that we've excluded.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
It's just, and I'm not, this isn't a comment for anybody, it's me. It is curious as to where those trucks are going.
Yeah.
That's, and it's, I guess we can't follow them, but it's I wonder, are most of them lost? Is it, the crazy GPS that found that it's 30 seconds faster? I mean, it would be interesting to know where the heck they're going and whether or not there's some destination that is causing the traffic. I know there's no way to know it, but it would be nice to know.
Mr. Healy, are you volunteering to be a citizen investigative reporter?
That I am not doing.
Park on Flag and interview.
All right, any other comments? So I think we have some marching orders. You'll come back, Mr. Linden, we will keep you informed as well, and we'll have this discussion on a future agenda as well. And we'll keep moving forward to see what we can do. All right, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, next up brings us to Chairman's report. So one is just a general comment under earmarking of funds. I just want to make sure that we're all very careful that with all of the grant money that's coming in and the ARPA and everything else, that we are not earmarking funds and or telling people that the funds are available to them. I think we need to be very careful because we're still looking at guidelines. We still don't know, the board hasn't discussed what we'd like to do and how we'd like to figure out how to distribute these funds. So again, that's just a quick comment to just to be very careful to not promote or promise isn't a good word, but just to suggest to somebody that because I would hate for somebody to find out that the board's going in a different direction. So I will leave that at that. Next up is use of town email by town officials. So we have an email policy. We have asked and to some level required people to use their town emails. It's not happening. There are still people that are sending emails from their personal accounts to other members of their boards and committees, or that we are sending emails to people and they're not getting them because they're not checking them. So I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, what is the next step for us? So there are ways that you could automatically forward your town emails to your personal emails, but it's on the backside. When you then respond, you have to make sure that you copy your town email, or it creates an issue. A public records request comes in and they see somebody's using their personal emails. Their personal emails can be requested as well. So I think my suggestion would be to the board to consider what we want to do. I personally think we should put out a sheet, work with Jay. He's great. And, come up with a plan, letting them know you can forward them, but putting some path in place that you cannot send town business from personal emails. It's just got to be a policy that we stick with, and it's a requirement for everyone. So, and I'll use the volunteer recognition breakfast as a prime example. We've had less responses than we've had in the past, and I tend to think it's because those responses only went to town emails. So I think it's a problem we have, and I think with public records requests coming in, I think it's something we should come out pretty strong with to anyone that's serving on a board and committee, that town emails are a requirement. I know it can be a pain sometimes, but when I reply to someone on an email that comes to me from their personal, I make sure I copy the town. But again, it's more on the backside I'm concerned about, that they're sending it and a town email is not being clicked on. So that's something we can certainly put on agenda, or we can just decide to explore what we want to do. I just think we need to do something sooner rather than later. I think it's become an issue. So I can leave it at that, or, and we can put it on for another agenda to discuss it in more detail. I know we've kind of brought it up in blips under members' reports and whatnot before, but I think a more extensive discussion. So maybe we can, not the 22nd, but maybe July 13th, we could have a discussion on that, just to figure out a path.
I think it's a good idea. I think, because I've got a bunch of ideas, sort of swirling around my head. I have no idea if any are any good. But maybe some brainstorming can help.
I think great minds coming together, Marty, can solve this problem.
Yes, and Lisa.
Yes, Sam, go ahead.
We've actually had this as an issue for a long time, and I'm struggling with actually what we do about it. Ultimately, you can tell people if you don't comply with the policy, you're off the committee, which is not a great solution. And we've actually sent out a lot of communications in the past. Previous boards have as well about doing this, and it hasn't had much impact, at least consistent impact. So I don't know that there's a perfect answer, but maybe getting Jay to look around and see if he can get ideas from other towns, see what do people do about this as a way to reinforce the right behavior here and educate people and talk about the issue relative to public records requests, for example. It's a real nightmare if you've got to go through your personal email accounts. Maybe people don't fully understand that. Maybe an outreach specifically to each committee, get on the agenda for each committee and for a meeting and make that point one of us or Jay or somebody to reinforce the point. I think it's worth focusing on, certainly, and maybe there are better ways to do it than we have. Thanks.
Great, Sam. Thank you.
Just a suggestion, because I have been wrestling with this for a long time. And one thing Jay did that helped me a lot is he can put your town email on your phone as well, so that if you see an email to your town, you get a town email that's auto forwarded to your work email, and it's more time sensitive. So you feel like you want to reply. So by having your town email on your email, it's a way so you can make a quick reply, but then resist the urge to just use your work email to reply.
Great, Andrew. I actually have it on my phone. And yeah, I find when I get that little notification, I typically go and take a look at it. So Chelsea, did you want to add anything?
Nothing new. I just would hate to see somebody's work or personal email get subject to a public records request. And so if we can just kind of hone in on that and maybe give some examples of issues.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we'll put that on for July 13th, and we can have a little bit more discussion on that. Last thing under Chairman's report is we have our volunteer appreciation breakfast coming up on Thursday. And again, reminders were sent out. I know Vanessa had worked on that, getting reminders out again to department. We're going to the chairs this time because again, if people don't check their email, the chairs tend to anyway. So hopefully that will be great. And just quickly to touch on the employee barbecue was spectacular. I have heard nothing but positive feedback from people. They thought Marty and Mark did a great job on the grill. It was a great delegation. And so just so our employees know, again, we so appreciate everything you've done through COVID and you know, everything you've done to keep the town running during a tough time. So that's it for me. Just an additional thank you to them. Next up, members report, the Brian Schifrin field dedication. Ms. Malinowski.
So on June 2nd, the Brian Schifrin Field signage was revealed, and it was a very nice ceremony put on by Southborough Recreation and Southborough Little League. And there were a lot of teams in attendance, and their families, and the Schifrins were there. Carolyn Dykema was there as well. And it was a beautiful day, and it lined up with ALS Day, which was great. And the sign is up on the old Finn 1 field, so it looks great. And they actually did an Eric Green sign as well to match, so it looks really nice over at Finn. If anybody is sitting in a pickup line during the week, you'll see it.
Great, Chelsea, thank you. June 13th, Eagle Scout ceremony. Mr. Healy.
Yeah, bear with me for a couple of minutes because I want to mention all of the they're not kids anymore. Most of them are bigger than me. But it was a similar with the Schifrin ceremony. It was on Sunday over at the Neary complex, and it was a beautiful day. Representative Dykeman was there as well. There were 8 Eagle Scouts because they missed last year, so there were 2 classes of them. And you know, they list, and I'll list them in a second, the projects they do. And so before Sunday, I took a ride around to take a look at them. You know, you see them if you're walking around, you'll see a bridge or something, and it's got a designation that was done by an Eagle Scout. But actually taking a ride around over the course of a day and a half and looking at these 8 projects, one of my thoughts was maybe it's a good Eagle Scout project for down the line. Maybe they've already done it, but to have a compilation. I mean, the Southborough Eagles Boy Scouts have been around for over 100 years, and have a compilation of the projects they've done because they add so much to the quality around here. Anyway, the Eagle Scouts, I want to make sure that we have a record of this. Gabrielis Bazikas, and he did the John Wilson bench at the memorial. Garrett Goodney, he did the platform over at Neary, the staging platform, as well as a couple of tetherball courts. Eric Hansen did a couple of the trail kiosks for the Trails Committee. Brendan Hermanspan did a beautiful wall over at St. Matthew's Church and landscaped it. Matthew Richardson did some cedar benches that are really nice up on the Chestnut Hill property. Zane Walter did a parking area and kiosk down at Chestnut Hill Farm. Andrew Zalov did the flagpoles down at the memorial, and you know, with painting them, etc. And then Adam Raimondo, did the softball benches and dugouts at the Woodward School. So again, just 8, 2 years of Eagle Scouts, and you know, an incredible addition to just, you know, nice things and that benefit everybody in Southborough. So kudos to all those kids who also gave very nice remarks and speeches as well. It's a good day.
Great, Marty. Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations to all of them. Number 3, ARPA funding. Mr. Stiver, that was you?
Yep, that was me. Thanks, Lisa. And I want to do one other thing before this quickly that came up recently. I had the pleasure of attending the groundbreaking ceremony for the new St. Mark's dormitory at the end of last week. A great event and impressive building. And it was interesting to hear the appreciation they expressed for the town's land swap with the golf course, which apparently allowed them to put the dorm where they wanted with the size they wanted. That unlocked the ability to do that. And they seemed very appreciative of that. And it was a great deal for the town as well. So it was a win-win kind of thing. But they're very excited about getting the kids on the same campus. That's going to happen by a year from August here, which is pretty impressive speed in terms of construction. So that's a great thing. I asked for the ARPA thing. I've been following that, as I think many of us have. And I think that continue to believe it's a great opportunity. Money is starting to flow very quickly here. And Lisa, per your comment about earmarking of funds, I think we should be careful about not promising anything to anybody. On the other hand, I think that it's not inappropriate to get people starting to think about kind of things that the various boards, committees, departments, areas ought to be considering for a list of potential projects there, because I think we have some opportunities to do some exciting big things that we wouldn't be able to afford ourselves, certainly. And I think that money is starting to flow very quickly. And there's a great value in having a good understanding of where the opportunities are for us, and particularly how the details work, because the Treasury, as I think folks have seen, is coming out almost weekly with updates on things, clarifications, because they don't really have a good handle on all the ideas here. For example, the Worcester County allocation, about $2 million that we're going to get, is still awaiting, as I understand it, update from Treasury in terms of when that's going to be available to us. So it's an ongoing, evolving process, but I think the better we can be prepared to start thinking about both near-term and longer-term projects will be to our advantage, as other people are struggling with it as well. So getting in there early, I think, is very helpful. And again, the issue for me is there are some external sources out there. National League of Cities is apparently working on a database of cities and towns across the country for examples of things, that projects that people are using this money for. I think that's a great resource. It's still in the development stage, but keeping an eye on that kind of thing. I continue to believe finding a consultant or two who may have been associated with the legislative process in DC that understands, what the intended uses of some of these things were, and how all the various pages or pieces fit together could be well spent money in terms of buying a few hours of expensive time from somebody who's really plugged into the technical details of this as we go forward. So again, I think the faster we could move on this in terms of laying out some initial steps would be a great plus, because I see it as sort of a once in a generation opportunity. It's going to be like $5 trillion spread around and a fairly broad range of things. So I think it's a great opportunity for us, and I hope we can focus on that in the near term. Thanks.
Do you mind if I say something?
No.
In regards to the ARPA fund. So, Sam, I agree that we should be aware of the guidelines as they're coming out. But I do have to say that I was pretty disappointed in watching the Conservation Commission meeting and then subsequently the recreation meetings the last 2 weeks. I think to have a member of this board encouraging a presentation of a project that wasn't even on our radar after South Union was pulled. I'm concerned that people are getting the wrong impression from this board. And I just think that we need to be very careful on saying that we're exploring all opportunities for the use of this fund. These funds, I think that there's a lot of priorities in this town. And as somebody who has small children that would love an additional playground in town, I don't think that that is the best use. Highest and best use for this money. So I would just caution all of us to hear out department heads, listen to what the needs are, but that we really need to buckle down and make sure that we're on the same page and that we discuss these things before they're brought and presented, and misrepresentations are presented in front of your boards and committees. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the point. And in fact, on that particular one, I was responding to a resident request about possible places to do that and who needed to be involved in the process. And I was not, at least in my mind, I was not endorsing or suggesting that this board was going to fund that particular project, simply that there are ways to find grant money, et cetera, to do those kind of things. And it was still a very evolving process. So I may have been a little misquoted on that one, but I think it's a good idea. And I think it's something that at least I personally would support, but I certainly did not, in my mind, commit any money or resources or support for that, as opposed to investigation at this point of it. I think it's a good idea. So.
All right, thank you. I know Carla's here. Is there anything while we have the subject on here? He's not muted. Okay. I don't know if there's anything you might want to add about maybe where things stand, or are you good? You get to come up here. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I figured you're sitting there. We might as well just take a minute and all right. So I'm going to mute. So Vanessa will show you how to unmute. Okay. Tomorrow, we actually have a meeting with the Mass Auditors and Accounting Association, and FEMA and ANF and Division of Local Services will be attending that webinar in the morning. And we're hoping for more information. You know, it is coming out piecemeal, and I agree. It's a big nut, you know. We did apply for the funds. Originally, the estimate was like about 2.9. For some reason, I saw another number. We got $64,000 more. So that's great, you know. But we did apply on the 10th, and no one that I have seen on our listserv or anything is actually received funds yet from a non-entitlement community. Originally, we weren't going to have to apply for it, but we did. So there's just so much going on with this, and even how, as CARES is wrapping up in December, how things are going to fit in, you know. I mean, is CARES going to say forget it, go to ARPA? It just, you know, and FEMA and back and forth, it's really kind of a conundrum, but we're working through it. I'm keeping my ear to the ground, and you know, there's 5 areas of uses, and they've identified ineligible expenses, so at least that's good. They've, you know, and ANF at the state, they say, is not going to have a legislative role. It's going to be, you know, at the federal level. And there is actually an open comment on the Federal Register where you can submit questions. And there's a lot of things that a lot of country, you know, cities all over the country. Yeah, some simple questions, some detailed. So, you know, that 151-page document, I think there's going to be some changes to that as things roll out. So I think we're early. I think it's good to have chats, but yeah, just kind of hear the needs, because it's a good opportunity. So that's all. Hopefully I'll know more tomorrow. And that's all for now. Stay tuned, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Carla. And just as a case in point, come back to Southborough. You came back at a crazy time, and we know how busy you have been on top of your normal duties, trying to deal with the CARES Act, FEMA, everything, ARPA now. So on behalf of the board, I think a huge thank you to you is certainly in order for all you've done and you've continued to do.
Yeah,
So
we're trying. We're going to get through this. So,
all right, thank you, Carla.
Madam Chair, I didn't have anything specific tonight. The one thing I just wanted to remind, put out there is that scholarship applications are due into the Selectmen's office physically, not electronically, but physically in the Selectmen's office, no later than this Friday, June 18th at 12 noon. And we'll then forward them on to the committee for their review.
Great, thank you, Mr. Purple. Next up, consent agenda. I think because of the feedback, I'll just go down the line and ask each of us individually if anyone has a hold. So Ms. Malinowski?
A, B, C, and F.
Mr. Haley?
I'm good.
Mr. Stivers?
No additional ones.
Okay, great. Mr. Denning, sorry. Mr. Denning.
I did not have any holds.
Okay, and I did not have any holds on what's left. So do we have? Yeah. All right, sorry about that. So based on that, D, E, and G, there were no holds on. Do I have a motion to approve D, E, and G as written on the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
You guys are fast. I couldn't get my finger off the button. All right, roll call. Ms. Malinowski. Aye. Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
And Ms. Braccio. So, Ms. Malinowski, A.
So on June 7th, row 33. I think it probably should just she think Attorney Costa did a thorough job.
Okay,
Yeah, that's all I had.
did anyone else have any corrections under A?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
Get unmuted here. Okay, on April 6th, line 55, I think it should say teen librarian instead of team librarian, T-E-E-N. And on May 18th, line 205, Mr. Healy was the one who abstained from bonding articles, much as I would like to. He gets credit for that. So,
Okay.
that's it for me.
Mr. Dennison, did you have anything?
No.
Okay, I did not either. All right, with those changes, do we have a motion? Make sure I'm not muted. To approve open session minutes, April 6th, 2021, May 18th, 2021, and June 7th, 2021, as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Ms. Melanowski. Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stetser.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington, sorry.
Aye.
And Ms. Brascio. All right, thank you. On B, Ms. Melanowski.
I'm abstaining from this.
Were there any other, actually, I have a comment.
So if you're going to discuss this, I'm gonna step out.
Does this mean we can like nominate her for a lot of things?
That's
when she's out?
Chairman, President for life.
All right, well, wait 1 second while Ms. Melanowski leaves the room. Okay, so the only thing I would ask the board to consider on this is changing the makeup from 7 members to 5. There's currently 6 members, 1 member is not re-upping, and depending on where things go with advisory, they may lose another member as well. So to keep things going, I would just ask the board to consider changing the number to 5. Because we will be at 5 after Mr. Hinter is not asking for reappointment. So we'll be at 5 at that point, but we don't know what's going to happen with advisory. So another member may be based on their quorum issue if Mr. Rooney, I believe, leaves. So
When does it currently run out, Lisa?
they're actually up for renewal. The charge is up through 6/30/21. So we would be extending it to 2022.
I'm fine with it going down to 5. Do we know how they feel about that?
No. I can certainly go back. We have a meeting coming up. I can certainly go back. Committee, we can put it on the 22nd under consent. Okay, that's fine. I just, before it got approved, I just wanted to make sure that we don't kind of put them in a pickle. So
Yeah, other than that, I don't have anything. Pretty straightforward.
okay, that was my only thing that I asked. So, all right, we'll put that on this. We'll table that. All right, shall we get Chelsea to come back in? That's all wait. Thank you,
She's
Mr.
waving
Rose.
here.
No, bang. Oh, that's that. All right, well, we wait a second for Ms. Malinowski to come back because I think that was Ms. Malinowski. She's getting her exercise tonight, folks. Anybody tuning in? All right, Chelsea, I will go to you.
So I held this one because I think, given the comments made earlier about the lack of email uses and kind of the time constraint that we've been under meeting every week and the lateness of town meeting this year, I would like to wait to actually approve these until next week and potentially reach out to the chairs of each committee to kind of give a second level of validation that these members who are identified here as reappointments truly do want to be reappointed. And then there were a few on here that said 22, but I think they really are 21.
Yeah.
So if we could just validate those. So if we can, if maybe somebody in the selectman's office can just reach out to each chair. I don't know if there's, I don't want to prevent the appointments and then create an issue with boards and committees not being able to meet, but I just want to make sure that these folks really do want to be reappointed. And of course, if there's anybody on here that we want to have in, then I would suggest we put next week.
Great, thank you. And I was going to hold this one as well, only because I know I've heard of 2 people that are on here that say reappoint that have made publicly clear that they're not looking to be reappointed. So it might be a good second step to be able to do that. And while we're looking at this, it might be worthwhile if there's anybody that the board would like to come in or hold, might be the time to schedule that for the 22nd.
I think we need to talk to the 2 people for historical.
Okay, I believe one of them, Marty, is not seeking reappointment. They had said that 2 meetings ago.
Okay, if that's the case, that's still might like to talk to them, but no, that's fine. But leading into our conversation later in the meeting, before I vote for any reappointments to Historical Commission, there needs to be a conversation.
Okay, great. So for now, we'll tentatively put that on hold. We'll come back with this on the 22nd. And Andrew or Sam, excuse me, did you have any you wanted to hold, or anyone you wanted to come in and have a discussion?
Not me, thank you.
No.
Okay, so we'll table that and come back to that on the 22nd. That should give us ample time. Okay, next, F.
Sorry, just one more thing on that. When we put this on for the 22nd, can we break out capital versus all other boards and committees? Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so we'll table that. Next up is authorized town administrator to sign statement of commitment for public health shared services program. Ms. Malinowski.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, any further?
No, I move to authorize the town administrator to sign a statement of commitment for public health shared services program.
Second,
Roll call, Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ms. Brascio, aye, and Ms. Malinowski abstain.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, draft charge for noise bylaw ad hoc committee.
Sorry. Next on the agenda, 7B, draft charge for noise bylaw ad hoc committee. Mr. Stivers, you have put together an initial charge. You want to take a second and talk about that, and then we'll go around for comments on that.
Sure, glad to. What I did was I looked at a variety of other committee charges that we've done in the past and put together something that seemed to me to be workable given the conversations that have gone on previously here, with a goal of getting a draft by the special town meeting in the fall, whenever that happens. I think that there is enough good material out there from the citizen petition and some of the other proposals on this to be reasonably close to getting something that can work. We've had a number of volunteers for this already. My concern was that I don't think it's too practical to have 10 or 15 people on this, so I picked a number of 7 and certainly open for discussion, debate on that. That seemed to me to be a reasonable number. I waffled on the advisory committee representative there, not clear that that's a perfect solution. On the other hand, advisory is important in terms of understanding and supporting whatever comes out. So inclusion seemed to me to be useful there. But again, the others, chief of police, building commissioner, heavily involved in the process. So again, would be helpful to get their direct input to the process, I thought. And the challenge, I think, would be winnowing down public volunteers to 3. We've had more than that so far, and I know a lot of people are very interested in this one. So again, I don't have strong feelings about much of this, but seemed to me to be a good way to start the conversation, and I think this could work.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stivers. So I do have some comments on it, but we'll just kind of go around and like to reserve mine to the end. So Ms. Malinowski, do you have any comments?
I do, and I had mentioned this at the most recent Board of Health meeting. I know that they have dealt with noise issues in the past. So there was definitely consensus on the Board of Health to have either a voting or an ex officio member, whether that be the public health director or somebody from the Board of Health board. But I'd like to see that in there. I'm not exactly sure the building commissioner's role here. I also am not sold that we need to have a selectman an advisory member either. I just, I think if we're said, we're going to be the reviewer of what they come back with. So I'm not completely sold on that. I think there's some other things in here that probably don't need to be included, given that they just fall under open meeting law. So I think those are my comments.
Okay, Mr. Healy.
Very similar to Ms. Malinowski. I would make it a 5-person committee. In addition to that, I'd have the police chief and a Board of Health representative, the ex officio. I would not have a member of the Board of Selectmen or advisory. And the substantive, what I would ask is that we specifically indicate that we, in addition to whatever draft proposal that comes forward, that the committee provide us with 2 or 3 approaches that were considered but not proposed. And I say that because I dove pretty deeply into these noise bylaws, and there's a million is an exaggeration, but only by a little bit. There's a ton of different approaches, from simply disturbing the peace to, incredibly detailed. And there are a variety of different ways to go here. And I'd like to see what was considered and rejected as well as what was proposed.
Mr. Dennington.
I have 2 comments on schedule. Would we consider, instead of asking the ad hoc committee to deliver a draft at least 30 days before the town meeting, to instead 30 days before the warrant is printed, to give additional time to schedule meetings to mark it up? And then also, I think Marty had some good ideas about the composition. My overall concern is that I think we need a balance of people on here in terms of the balance between people who are going to be more focused on having something which is simpler and easier to enforce, and people who are more enthusiastic about doing very detailed, that I just don't want people who would be inclined to have a simpler, easier to enforce version. I want people like that equally represent the committee. And I think we can do that by just having, rather than designate one person from have too many designated people, to just have at large members, and keep that consideration in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I had some of those same thoughts with advisory and the Board of Selectmen. I know, Mr. Cyrus, I'm sure you will be attending all of those meetings. So I would imagine they will hear input as well. I do think that the police chief and the building commissioner should come off, because she has no enforcement on this. The enforcement is going to be your police department. So I would like to see that come off. In the Board of Health, I think recently they've taken up, I believe it's Ken's. So they've been looking at a complaint they had from there for noise. So I would be fine with the 3 at large. And I think, Andrew, we're going to have more than 3 people apply to do this. So I think we're definitely going to have the opportunity to have a diverse group of people out of those three. But I agree with you completely. I think both sides need to be represented. I also don't know that we need the term, yes, but anything that's under open meeting law, as Chelsea said, I think that doesn't really need to be there. So if we did Board of Health as ex officio, Chief of Police as ex officio, 3 members at large.
5 members. at large.
5, I'm sorry, 5 members. 5 members at large or 3?
I thought it was a 5-person committee with 2 ex officio. That was.
You're correct. You're correct. Yep. Yep.
So that's 3 at large.
Jesus. Well, Sam and I are on the same page tonight too. Listen to this. So no, I think,
Ex officio is an advisory capacity.
So 5 at large and 2 ex officios.
okay. Okay, so I would be good with that. And then, let's see, consideration, I'm just reading through real quick. Potential warrant to be included, and that's on there as well. So, okay. Sorry, Chelsea.
What about the timing? So, I guess we're anticipating that this is going to be done for fall town meeting, and then,
well, why I'm shaking my head at that, Chelsea, is because it's going to have to go through the public hearing process through planning board. And if we bring people in, if we tonight put out a call, well, we can't even do that until we have the charge. We won't have the charge till the 22nd. If we put out a call for volunteers, you're looking at July 13th. And then our next meeting really isn't until August. You know, and we could sit a committee potentially and do interviews in July. But then you're basically giving them, you need 60 days, I think it is, before town meeting to be able to start the process. And I don't know, that's another discussion we have to have. The 22nd is town meeting and where we think it's going to be.
So is this realistic to have this ready for a fall special town meeting? Like, should we be that specific in here? I just don't know that it's realistic for them to get the work done that they need to, given the schedule you just outlined.
Maybe they will be superstars and get something together rather quickly. But yeah, I think we should, my opinion, maybe we should just change it to a potential fall, but something along the lines of looking more at an annual town meeting.
Or as quickly as possible.
Yeah, we could do that, Sam, and then it leaves it open-ended as well to some degree. I just think fall's going to be real tough.
Yeah, that feels very ambitious.
Yeah.
So other than that, the draft was perfect.
It is, Mr. Stivers. We should all redline for you.
As was the play, Mrs. Lincoln.
You just have. So is the next step for me to take another pass at this with this input?
Please, and if we can have it the 22nd, then we can go ahead and approve the charge, and then we can put the call out for volunteers and have.
I can turn a draft around quickly, I think, so thanks.
All right. So, item C, liability insurance and services provided by the town. These are all-
Okay, so Mr. Hegarty actually brought this to my attention that Maya has changed their coverage for additional liability insurance for notarizing non-town documents, so residential documents. So what that means is starting on 7/1, they are not covering third-party claims for notarized documents. It falls outside the umbrella of Chapter 258. They're offering an alternative coverage for a notary. I think the quote that we got from Maya was $250 per notary per year. And they're not requiring municipalities to obtain this additional coverage, but they're also not going to cover you. So I reached out to the departments that our notaries, and that would be town clerk, treasurer collector, and conservation. Conservation's number is probably overstated slightly here. It's probably more between like 80 and 90 a year, not the 130. Melissa had been a notary for 6 months prior to COVID, so it's a little bit dicey to kind of figure out exactly how many she's done. But I wanted to bring it to this board's attention that if we don't obtain the additional coverage, that we would be we'd open ourselves up to liability. I will note that when I was speaking with the clerk's office, that some of these residential documents can be pretty lengthy to deal with, if they're wills, real estate documents, that kind of thing, up to 45 minutes an hour to deal with. The most that a municipality can charge is $1, which is kind of not worth collecting the $1. But there are banks, the banks in town do this for a nominal fee. I think they charge a little bit more than $1. But so I just didn't know what your thoughts were on pursuing this, or to terminate doing resident notary documents.
So, Mr. Haggerty, do you have anything you'd like to add? Then we'll go to the board for discussion, but this affects your department as well, so be interested to hear your thoughts.
Great, thank you. In addition to the banks, UPS charges, all the UPS stores do this as well. They charge $5 a piece, and it's interesting, there are certain documents that they will not notarize. There are very few documents that we notarize that are town documents that are related to the functioning of the town government. It's a service we provide to residents, and frankly, an awful lot of this is to businesses, people coming in from out of town. There's people driving through town. I've had people from Worcester stop by. What brought you here today? I was on Route 9. Okay. But if we provide the service, we have to provide the service to everybody. That's the state guidelines on that. From my perspective, we now schedule only certain hours because of the disruption. We just learned that with the COVID number, it's not realistic. In addition to people coming in, sometimes these documents take a long time. And unfortunately, what's happened in the age of Zoom legal stuff, people are creating their own documents, coming in and asking us to notarize and provide witnesses and all kinds of stuff. And I got to tell you, I am really uncomfortable with some of the documents that come in, and I've turned people away. I said, I'm just not comfortable doing this. I've turned people away when they've had documents already signed and said their father's going to be dead for 3 months. I said, well, it doesn't really matter. He's dead without signing the document. Yeah, there's been special discussions, but they don't get the car. So it doesn't matter. If I got the car, you're not going to sign it. So to me, it really comes down to a couple of things here. One is the liability issue. That's a big issue. And a number of towns have limited, even if they wanted to pay liability, limited the kind of documents that they will notarize, and they kind of waiting it, making it up themselves. And I'm uncomfortable doing that. So to me, the issue comes down to a couple of things. Number one is liability. If the town doesn't want to pay the $1,000, which is going to cost the town to provide this service to the town, then frankly, in the clerk's office, we're not going to notarize documents. We're just not going to accept that risk. It's not going to happen. Number two, the other piece of that becomes, does it make sense in this day and age with the availability of people to notarize these documents, and business notarize them, for the town to provide this service? And that's a policy decision for you guys to make. That's really what it goes down to. So, thank you, from my perspective.
Can I ask Mr. Haggerty two very quick questions? Number one, what are the time periods when you offer the service?
Right now, we've limited to like Tuesdays and Thursdays by appointment. We'll set them up anytime on those days.
Okay.
We do that with marriages as well, because it's so long. I just don't want to lose 45 minutes during the day because somebody shows up and they've got to have, a summer school.
Oh, no, I get that. I get both sides. Number one, I get,
right.
I guess my reaction is I think the town should offer the service, but I think your instinct is a good one, that it be limited, and it's certainly the days and the like. And I don't quite understand the liability part of it. In other words, this is a bump in liability coverage.
Maya is saying that they will not provide liability coverage to the town unless the town pays an additional premium. So if we want to continue to provide a notary service to the public, in order for the notaries to be covered under the town's insurance, it'll cost an extra $1,000 a year. So from my perspective, if the Board of Selectmen decide not to do that, then the clerk's office is out of the notary business except for town documents.
Got it. All right. I guess my inclination is that $1,000 a year is worth it to be able to provide that service to residents on a limited basis you've described.
So Chelsea, there's only 4 people in between the clerks, the treasurers, and conservation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, we just had a discussion on the transfer station, and to me, this one's a no-brainer to move forward on this. Like, I think, Marty, you're on the same page as me. I don't.
Yeah, it just strikes me that, you know what, it's one of these things where, you know, how many times during the course of a year do you need something notarized? But when you do, you need something notarized. And I think it's for $1,000, I think it's, and some employee time is worth the town providing the service.
I agree, a useful service, but clearly we ought to get the insurance if we do this. And I think that, as Mr. Hegarty suggests, we ought to be cautious about, you know, communicating, limiting hours, et cetera, so people don't wander in at all hours of the day and disrupt the normal workflow. So I don't know exactly how you communicate that effectively, but.
Have you met Mr. Hegarty? I have a feeling that is communicated effectively through the clerk's office.
If people are wandering into the Concom, for example, looking for a notary, et cetera, we want to be careful about that.
Yeah, Sam, I was going to go to the same place. The clerk's office is limiting it to 2 specific days. What's to stop someone from going to conservation of the treasurer's office? And if you limit it to everybody to those 2 days, I mean, I suppose we could do that if warranted. I don't know, Jim, your thoughts?
To manage you don't know when somebody's coming in, whether it's 3 minutes or gotta be a long haul. And then you have to wait while they get their witnesses, because should be their witnesses in. If you don't make it uniform, that's exactly what you're gonna have. They're gonna bust from one to the other. So the reason I came back here was to ask that whatever your decision is on this, I'd ask that once you make your decision on legal counsel, I'm going to put a legal request in for guidance as to what documents we should not be notarizing, what we should not, because I got to tell you, I'm uncomfortable notarizing some of these wills and people coming on like UPS store will not notarize wills. And I just think instead of towns making up their own rules, which frankly a lot of clerks are, no, we need some legal guidance as to what's appropriate, what's not. So, thank you.
Maybe we have only the town clerk's office be the notary here and stop the flow to other places in townhouse.
Well, I look at, oops, I think, there you go. I'm looking at the numbers here. So obviously the clerk, so Chelsea, you're saying conservation's numbers changing, which,
Yeah, I think it's more like 80 to 90.
so I'd be curious as to what they're notarizing, and if it has to do with permitting or decisions or something like that, and you'd hate to limit.
They're not. I went up and asked them because I questioned the numbers, and the way we got our numbers, I pulled the notary books and actually went through and went page by page back for several years and did the averages. They didn't look at the book. They just, when I talked to Melissa, she said, when Carol Ostrich was here and we were busy downstairs, she would occasionally send people upstairs. So it was a guesstimate. There's no hard numbers behind that. I don't think there's any chance that she's doing that many. It's not happening. But we can make this work no matter what. We can find a way to make it work.
Okay, so I think there's general consensus on moving forward and doing this. As far as the limitations, I mean, the clerk's office has put their limitations on it, I suppose, before we institute between conservation and the treasurer. We should probably have a conversation with them. So I think
I'd be perfectly comfortable leaving the logistics of it to Mr. Hegarty.
Me too.
And let him come up with is that okay?
Me too.
Does that make sense?
it does. No,
Okay.
it totally does. And I didn't get to delegate though. So now I'm kind of sad.
Maybe somebody said I'm coming, Lisa.
No kidding. All right, so Jim, you're fine with that?
I move to approve increasing the liability insurance for the 4 employees that provide notary services provided to the town, and with the limitations that Mr. Hegarty outlined.
Second.
Roll call, Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
And Ms. Brascio. Aye.
Thank you. Next up, D, review of report.
Sorry. Next up, oh, no, I don't think he is. It looks like he is, but there's feedback when he is. Okay, sorry. Next up, review of special municipal employee designations. So, there's a list in the packet I had asked, so we had an idea of, where we stood. Now, special counsel for the Conservation Commission, that's done. So that will be coming off. But my question to the board is, I understand why some of them are on here. And one of the things we had said we would do was to review them. So, Board of Assessors, obviously that's a requirement. Advisory, I'm not sure why advisory would need to be on here as a special municipal employee.
I've never known that. Yeah,
Purple.
we talked about it advisory years ago and everybody was puzzled as to why that was there, so.
Mr. Purple, do you have any idea?
I don't remember what the rationale was. I think it's been there for quite a while. So it may be a time to just take a look at that and see if the exemption is still needed.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we could take a look at that. Also, Council on Aging, I'm not quite sure why that is on there. Economic Development Committee, or some of us had sat for that when we were on here. I think we should take a look at that and see if they need or want that designation. Mr. McKay was the one that had applied for it, and he's no longer on the board, so.
At least I think typically that is what, again, my view is that is, and I think I said this when we did the policy. I don't see any downside at all to as many people as possible being special municipal employees. It gives them additional protection for inadvertent conflicts. It doesn't give them any sort of license if they have actual conflicts, but it gives them protection for unintended conflicts. Typically, I think advisory, I might even have been me, 20 some years ago. It usually is that there's a possibility that somebody might be in front of another board or committee, and so you can't just pick one person. Everybody on the committee of the board becomes a special municipal employee. But as I said, it doesn't give you license to violate the conflict of interest laws. All it does is it gives you additional protection against really inadvertent violations of law. Again, my view is we should make more rather than fewer people special municipal employees for that reason.
I echo what Marty said. And because it also has an impact on the ability to recruit people to committees, and we face sometimes challenges on filling spots on committees.
Mr. Stivers.
I'm ambivalent on this. If there's a need to do it, fine. I don't think we ought to go whole hog and make everybody special municipal employee, but if there's a need for it, like Andrew's point, if it makes it easier to recruit, that's useful.
Thank you, Ms. Malinowski.
Yeah, I think I'd like to understand why some of these are on here. So I guess I'm on the more restrictive side.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the more restrictive side too. So again, just to understand more so than why they're on there. So I guess, Mr. Stivers, you were the one that was on the fence. So we'll leave this one up to you.
The swing vote.
You're the swing vote on this one. Now remember, boys against the girls.
I'm very confused. This has never happened to me before. I don't know what to do. I think it would be interesting to talk to the committees and see if there's a particular need for the ones we've highlighted here, and if there's some particular need, then I'm interested in hearing it. So, but I think several of them are fairly clear.
All right, so that was great on the fence, Sam. But, so I guess, you know what, we just send out a note to say that we're reviewing the special municipal status, and do they still have an interest in retaining that status? And the answer could be as simple, Marty, as yes, and you know, why? And Andrew, I think for advisory probably applies very well to the point that you made. So again, it could be something very simple as that, but I think doing the due diligence of reviewing it, I think it doesn't hurt to ask the question, and we can put it back on the 22nd. You know,
It's just the two committees, right? Advisory and EDC. The
and
others-
Council on Aging.
Council on Aging, right? I think the others are fairly clear, I think.
Yeah, I just don't think there's been any demonstrated real need to depart from the list we have right now. So, but I guess we're not really taking any vote on this right now. We're just, okay.
No, so we'll just send out an email, Andrew, and again, we'll send it to the chairs, and, you know, they can respond, and we'll have it in the next packet, and I'm sure it's just some additional information, that's all. All right. Next up, discussion of council review of the IMA for shared services. Ms. Malinowski.
So 2 meetings ago, we discussed the IMA for the shared services grant for the 4 towns. And I just wanted to report back with an update on the council review of that. So as you remember, it's us, Northborough, Westborough, and Boylston. And MAHB, Mass Association Health Boards, it has a legal review of the IMA document, as well as the town of Northborough, whose town council is KP Law, is reviewing this. My understanding is that Westborough and Boylston are choosing not to have this reviewed, or at least they haven't committed to have their own town council review the IMA. And I wanted to get direction from this board as to whether we would prefer to use to have town council review the IMA. And just to give you a timeline, this the IMAs need to be signed off by July 31st. So we do have some time if we would prefer that our town council review this as well. I personally, my opinion is that I would like our town council to review it. But I just wanted to get a sense for this board.
Should we have our town council reviewed after Westborough does to Northborough, whoever's going to do it, to do a second pass as opposed to a first pass?
I don't see the harm in just having our town council take a look at it. It's a pretty straightforward document. I looked at it before. Just the one point I mentioned is that, you know, it seemed open-ended a little bit in terms of what it said. We are agreeing to pay invoices, and we just need a little more specificity, but not making it super open-ended. And then that's not committing you to paying for staff, thing, et cetera.
I agree with Mr. Dennington. I do sort of rather later.
And I did ask that question about invoices. It's section 7C, I think. And the response was the majority would fall into Northborough, but they're putting that in there just to cover themselves, but they're not anticipating where we're using software that's like, whereas Northborough's the fiscal agent, they'll be receiving the money. They wanted it in there too, just in case something came up, but they're not anticipating it. That was the answer.
All right, Chelsea, do you have what you need to move forward?
So I will send it to town council. Well, I'll request it. We send it to town council.
All right, great. Thank you. Next up, update discussion 15 Main Street. So want the board to be aware that historical was invited to attend tonight. They had through the society a prior engagement, and that for the record, the chair of historical had requested that we not take any substantive discussion, have any substantive discussion of 15 Main Street, and to take it off the agenda for tonight. But they have listed it on their agenda for the 17th with specific items, including the BOS comments on the 15th, legal opinion requested by the BOS, and revisions to the rules and regulations fact sheet. So my goal for tonight is I want to go through the timeline briefly. It was included in the packet. I want to review the steps of the bylaw and Aldo's subsequent opinion. And I know Marty, you'll jump in and add if I miss anything. Marty was chair when this initial discussion came up. I also had a subsequent phone conversation with town council today. So we'll just kind of go through the timeline, just so the board's aware. I don't want the board to be at a disadvantage if we don't have some form of discussion tonight, and historical as a discussion. So,
Well, if I can, Lisa, as well, this is a public meeting. And this is a serious matter for the town. And I think it's important for us to frame exactly what's going on here. So I agree completely with your decision.
thank you. So on June 25th, and again, I'm just going to try to go through this briefly, just so everyone understands the process. A demolition application came in for 15 Main Street. The Historical Commission on the 25th was notified as per the bylaw. The Historical Commission chair sent a letter to the homeowner stating historical significance of the home. That was done without a meeting or any discussion by the commission. These are some of the missteps that I had mentioned. The chair then requested confirmation of an accurate listing of the homeowner, which ended up, the permit was updated and corrected with the sister of who was applying for it. On the 17th, the historical reissued the letter from June 30th, changing the date and just, and which reflected the updated information to the permit. Again, the commission met on June 1st and on July 28th. There was no meetings in between. And I'm going to go to the bylaw in just 2 seconds. So there was a public hearing held. Well, so the commission met on the 28th. They discussed an in-person tour of the exterior and request interior photos from the homeowner. They scheduled a public hearing for 8/18 at 5:30. A public hearing was held, but the building department was not notified as per 63.3 from the procedures of the code to publish the public notice with the date, time, and place and the purpose in the newspaper. It also wasn't posted at town hall for a period of no less than 7 days. This was also referenced in an email by the chair that she knew that it needed to be done. So a public hearing was not, and we verified with the newspaper just to make sure that somehow it didn't get done. There was no public hearing scheduled. On the 18th, they had a public hearing. Obviously, there was no notice to be read. They didn't close the hearing before votes were made, but again, the process concerned with the public hearing. An action plan was sent to the homeowner on the 19th, which included the information in the 3-page fact sheet that you have here. And let's see, there was a letter sent to the homeowners that the homeowner wanted to be included in a meeting. Then you can see per the timeline when it was on the agenda, when letters went to the homeowner. On December 11th, the commission, which you have a copy of that email, sent Lori a note telling her that the permit was to be closed. The homeowner came back on July 13th and there was subsequent discussion on that. I know Marty spoke to the homeowner as well. So there's a couple things I want to point out here as to what I said. So per the bylaw, under procedure, under D, it requires that it specifically says within 10 business days after receipt of the application, the commission shall make a determination. It doesn't say or a designated person from the commission, and there was no meeting, so that didn't take place. Then under E, it specifically talks about the public hearing, and obviously the reason for the public hearing is for the public to have the input. That didn't take place. After the public hearing, they determined it was significant and that no permit could be issued for 9 months. So let's see, let me move on from there. So those are some of the things, but I think these are things that education could potentially help with as well in moving forward. But I think it created issues within the process of per the bylaw. So I'll move on and we can come back, and happy to answer any questions on that as well. Aldo was given this sheet, a 1-page sheet. He believed that was the rules and regulations. As you go further back, I had asked his opinion on the sheet, the fact sheet, because that's what's being used as the rules and regulations currently. And I was concerned about some of the language that's in there and the authority that's in there as well. One of the issues and concerns with the homeowner was she was being required to sell her house. And that's why the permit, if you had read the emails from Mr. Weisham to Lori, that was the reason why. And I don't believe, and town council doesn't believe, that the demolition delay bylaw has the authority. And the only person that can stop a demolition delay bylaw is your building inspector, who is your issues the permits. As well, there was a way that it could have been done through judicial intervention if they felt, the commission felt that the homeowner wasn't working towards what needed to be done. Aldo said a judicial intervention could have taken place, and he could have stepped in. He could have, worked between him and Lori. There was the violations that could have taken place. There were letters and whatnot, but the permit was closed by the historical commission, who didn't have the permit to close, the authority to close the permit, sorry. So now we move on to May, and they come back before historical, and they took a vote, and there were 3 caveats to the vote to kind of move forward. The homeowner came back with a whole different set of plans. She was very clear. She wanted a detached garage, and it wasn't going to be allowed. And she then received an email that had additional information that wasn't part of the vote and what she needed to do. And she was advised by her counsel that it's overstepped. At that point, she had reached out to Mr. Purple, and because she felt she could issue the permit. The 9 months had passed. It's not a stop, it's a delay bylaw. You can only delay for 9 months. And you have, if you look at the bylaw under section, well, it's in section 63E for procedure. It says that after public hearing determines the building should be preferentially preserved, the commission shall notify the building inspector. No demolition permit may be issued until 9 months. And then you have 2 other opportunities under H, that if before the 9 months is out, you meet either one of these 2 requirements, a permit can be issued. But at the end of the day, 9 months went by, the clock didn't stop ticking in December, and she was issued a demolition permit. At that point, like I said, Lori had reached out to Mr. Purple. He reached out to Marty and I individually, not together. We reviewed all the information and supported the decision that the building inspector had made, that the time had run out basically on the permit. Now, I did include in the packet some of the emails that went on as well. Clearly, the chair of the commission disagrees with this. He believes that the permit had stopped, but according to council as well, they can't stop the permit. And you can't make someone sell their house. Can't be the reason to stop the permit. There are ways, and I went and I looked through probably 15 other towns, and I looked at the demolition delay bylaws, and some towns have very successfully worked with people and have come up with someone to buy the house and actually move the house someplace else. And there's grants through, there's federal grants as well that some of them use to do that. So I think opportunities were here, but as you see in some of the emails, basically the homeowner was told you need to put your house on the market. And going back to the fact sheet, I've asked some additional comments from town council on this as well. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's kind of where we lie today. I mean, I would hope that going forward, whether it be through education or training, we can help the commission understand the 4 corners of what they can and can't do. So I don't know, Marty, would you like to add anything to that, because you were chair at the time?
Well, the main thing I'll add is that, in my view, the actions of the historical commission, and I look back through their minutes, I don't think this was an isolated instance. I think this was done to other homeowners. And I'm kind of embarrassed as an official in the town of Southborough that really under our watch, you know, mine is a 2-year watch at this point, that we allowed a committee in the town of Southborough treat some residents, some taxpayers in Southborough be treated the way Ms. Connell was, and I think some other people were treated. I also think that the actions of the historical commission have exposed the town to potential liability, maybe significant liability. Because you looked at 15 or so demolition bylaws. Lisa, I probably looked at 75 or 80. And aside from the clear language of the bylaw itself, aside from the clear language of the pamphlet that's provided by Mass Historical to the Historical Commission that they use in their deliberations that make it clear that this is a demolition delay bylaw. What we had here is clearly one person on the Historical Commission, but unfortunately without any breaks from other people on the Historical Commission, basically creating their own law. They created their own law that said, in order for there to be a demolition in the town of Southborough, you have to sell your house, or at least put your house on the market. The town of Southborough in its town meeting didn't vote on that. Our bylaw doesn't say that. That's an outrageous sort of infringement on people's property rights. And yet our Historical Commission has been doing that to people. It is, again, I have apologized profusely to Ms. Connell for the fact that this was allowed to happen to her. I'm going to find out who the people who were otherwise treated this way by the Historical Commission, and I'm going to reach out and apologize to them. Again, I'm embarrassed as an official in the town that this was allowed to happen, and I take some responsibility for it, for not realizing that we had, in my view, a rogue commission that was abusing the homeowners in Southborough for God only knows what reason, but pretty clearly illegally. And on top of that, when the headlights, you know, when their eyes were caught in the headlights, as far as I can tell, they provided false information to the Board of Selectmen through Mr. Purple by claiming that a regulation they were allegedly relying on had been reviewed and approved by town council. And that's not the case. Mr. Cipriano, I think 3 different times has said, no, this thing that they are relying on, which again, was never noticed, was never voted, was never adopted, and is contrary to the bylaw, was represented to me, to Mr. Purple, and I think to this entire committee as, and to Mr. Cipriano as having been approved by him, and that is just not true. This is a big deal in my view. And I'm not sure what we do with respect to the Historical Commission and their involvement. We can't unilaterally change the demolition bylaw, but it is quite frankly dangerous to have the Historical Commission with its current composition dealing with that level of authority. And I really think we need to figure out some way to address it.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments?
Yeah, I've got a couple of comments.
Sure, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I've dug through this stuff as well, and I continue to be, I guess, a little confused about the process, but it sure seems to me, Lisa, that you're on the right track, that there were some process steps there that weren't consistent for whatever reason, and that to me is a problem that needs to be fixed, maybe through education or whatever. And also, I try to be fairly careful about the 2 sections that you referred to, section G and H, I think it was there, that talked about the 9-month delay, which seemed to me to be operative in this case. So in fact, my understanding of it was that after 9 months from the original determination, demolition could proceed at that point. And that seems to be pretty clear. On the other hand, I think there was some lack of clarity in the bylaw language there. So I think that needs to be addressed. But my other concern is that I think that there's a lesson in that I think we need to have legal input more closely involved in this process, because town council, I think, could have been useful in shedding light on what is legal according to the bylaw and from other constraints that the town needs to operate under. And that, again, didn't seem to be present at the right times and the right quantities here. So I think that particularly in circumstances like this, I think we need to have closer oversight with town council on these things. But I ultimately think that there's a value in going back and looking at the bylaw itself, trying to figure out, are there things in there that seem to be causing problems that we've had several of now? And can we find ways to make that clearer for people, as well as then being able to implement more correctly procedurally going forward? And I'm not sure, again, what exactly the right process for that is, but clearly more oversight in terms of the procedural aspects is important.
Great, thank you, Sam. I will just add,
I do agree with you to a point about the bylaw. I did go look at other towns, like I said, and Marty did as
I'll start again. So I agree with concerns in the bylaw and maybe some level of confusion, but in the towns I looked in, it's all basically the same. It's 9 months from the start of the public hearing, and you know, and I know that the chair you know, had made reference to two of the under, what's it, H2, you know, and so I do agree that there's things that we could do probably a little bit better on that, Sam, but also as far as Aldo goes, I requested every opinion he's given on the demolition delay bylaw. I mean, see the stack of papers here? More than half of it is all of the things I've talked to you about tonight. I wanted to make sure before we had this discussion that we did our due diligence. And Aldo, when he was doing the one-page sheet that you have here, and he had approved this, he mentioned it again, but he also mentioned it in October to them that the commission could amend its rules and regulations and include clarification, but he offered multiple times to meet with them to do this. I don't know how, and again, only the historical commission can explain to us where this fact sheet came from. When Ms. Cannell received her letter from the historical commission after the hearing, it was basically that fact sheet put on the sheet telling her what she had to do, and town council has opined that if and he didn't get into as much detail as I had hoped he would, but one of the things he said in the opinion that you have here is that I'm just going to try to pull it up real quick so I can quote it exactly. He said, by way of example, there are potential issues in this fact sheet which go way beyond the intended rulemaking authority. One example would be the need to submit a mortgage or real estate appraisal. I mean, if he's calling that out, what do you think? And again, telling somebody they have to sell their house. So again, he made himself available, Sam. He kept asking them repeatedly. Now, again, I don't know where the fact sheet came from.
That's vaguely familiar. I think I've seen that years ago. I think that's been.
Yeah, Lisa, just following up on that, this is not on Aldo. This is simply not on Aldo. He made himself available. He provided legal opinions. When he was asked questions specifically about proposals, about what could be done, what couldn't be done, not only did he respond to those questions, as Lisa pointed out, he offered to review things. And instead, they made up law. They made up a law that doesn't exist anywhere else in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that wasn't adopted by our town at town meeting. You can't do that. You can't do that. And they did it. And people in town were hurt as a result of that, and probably spent substantial amounts of money that they didn't have to spend. And again, somebody has to answer for that.
So I don't know where the sheet came from, Sam. I don't know how long it's been out there. I mean, but Michael was or the chair, excuse me, was very clear in his emails to Mr. Purple that town council, and again, today, that, you know, these sheets were, everything was signed off on by town council, and that's just not the case. So again, there is an issue. It needs to be addressed, but I wanted, and Andrew, I'll go to you, I'm sorry, but I wanted this board to not be blindsided by a conversation that might take place on historical. And I respect that historical couldn't be here tonight, but I think we as the appointing authority had to have this discussion when the town is potentially facing or could face liability from it. We wouldn't be doing due diligence to the citizens of this town that put us here. So that's why this discussion continued tonight. So I'm sorry, Andrew, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Thank you for raising these issues. The two things that I would add, when I went looking for this fact sheet on the website, on the Historical Commission website, and I couldn't find it on.
It's there. If you go to the right-hand side and it talks about, I'm sorry, on the left-hand side, there's a link to it. I don't have my phone out with me. Yeah, I can tell you where it is.
Yeah, no, it is there.
Yeah, if you bring it up, it's on the left-hand side. I think it's 4 or 5 down. It says something about questions or guidance or something on the demolition delay bylaw. I want to say it's 4th or 5th down. And if you click on it, it takes you right to the fact sheet. Yes, it takes you right to the fact sheet. And like I said, when Ms. Connell, after the hearing, the letter she got on after the public hearing, so it was on August 19th, the letter she got with the action plan to the homeowners was the fact sheet. It was basically cut and pasted in a way into it. So that was the starting process. So, I mean, irregardless, I think there are things that we can certainly fix. And I think education may help some of these things. Clearly we had, processes weren't followed. And that's something that we can help fix. I mean, that's our job as well, but we can't overlook what happened either.
And Lisa, the other thing I'll point out is that how destructive this was to the process, because Ms. Connell, based on my conversations with her, perfectly reasonable woman who's lived in Southborough for decades, wants to stay in Southborough, and was amenable to exploring ways to do the best she could to maintain the historical look of the house, et cetera, et cetera. And because the Historical Commission took this heavy-handed and I think very illegal approach to dealing with Ms. Connell, the 9 months lapsed. And now she can do whatever she wants with that house. She can knock it down tomorrow morning if she wants, because Historical didn't do their job, but did a job that they weren't authorized to do. Again, I just find it outrageous.
And one thing I'll add too is in conversations that I've had as well, if it was in a historic district, it would be different. And I think they're taking potentially, I don't know this for a fact, but I think some of the authority that's given in that fact sheet would be in a historic district. It's very much stricter standards than what we have. So I'm sorry, Andrew, you were.
Well, just the other observation I was going to make is I read the fact sheet and under intent and purpose, you got that first paragraph. It just is word for word the same as the beginning of the Bible, right? That first paragraph that actually recites the intent word for word of 63(1)(a), and then the next paragraph begins with, in accordance with the demolition delay bylaw, comma. So that means that what follows after the comma should be something is rooted in and it just goes way off. And there's nothing in the demolition delay bylaw about an action plan or anything like that.
I will add, if you hit the links on the one-page sheet that town council approved, it actually takes you to the fact sheet too. So there's a way to get to it from there through the hyperlinks. So again, so this is Chelsea, and I'll come to you as well. Andrew, are you set? Okay, Chelsea, I'll come to you.
So just two things. I just think it's unfortunate that the process that happened kind of missed the genesis of the demolition delay bylaw. And, I think the intent, like you had said, is that a historic home gets preserved in some fashion. Yeah. And I think it's our job as selectmen to make sure that our residents are treated appropriately and that the appropriate processes are followed so that they're not put in a situation where they have to, go outside to get assistance to get through the process. So this is very concerning to me in general. So I do think that we need to make sure that the Historical Commission has the tools to appropriately, enforce what's within their purview.
So my suggestion is going to be at this point is I'm going to invite the Historical Commission again, but I know Marty invited them a couple times and they didn't want to come. So I'm sure they'll watch this hearing and, we'll invite them on the 22nd to come and talk about it. I know Michael put in a subsequent request for counsel that I haven't, again, it came late sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
The scheduling issue, because the 22nd, is that a date where we were going to talk about the downtown bylaw and trying to make some progress on the follow-up from the planning board? Because I think of that discussion that you're thinking of and the downtown is maybe best have separate meeting because they're both kind of weighty issues. What do you think of that?
It's interesting. The 22nd is when we're deciding who to hire for the council as well. I don't know. That could be a short or long discussion. I don't know. But and it's not. This is our second scheduled meeting of the month, right? So that's kind of a special one. I'll leave that up to you and Chelsea. But I guess my instinct would be to be very. I agree with Andrew. Be very wary about just how much I include on our agenda. But I trust you guys will make the right decision.
Okay, well, I mean, so my only reasoning for wanting to do it on the 22nd is we've met and we've talked about it. Historical is going to meet and talk about it. If we wait a month to actually have them come in and have a discussion, there's a lot of time for misinformation to be given to the public. And I worry about that as well. I mean, we went through this and so that's my only concern. I do agree we've cut a lot on the 22nd. And we're looking at one meeting in July and one meeting in August.
Okay, I just want to try as best we can to keep enough time to have productive, because I thought that there was actually some productive elements of the last short meeting between the board of selectmen and the planning board about that, where the issues were narrowing and
they've narrowed more, Andrew.
So I would like to try to keep the 22nd, the next meeting, as much as possible focused on that, because that's something where we can really do some things concrete to maybe get that in a position where it's ready for a special town meeting. And we're not going to meet as frequently in the summer.
So I'm open. I mean, if the board is amenable to July 13th for this discussion, then that's fine. I mean, I don't have an issue either way. I mean, we did put this information out in the packet. It's available for anybody that has an interest to go and see it. Go ahead, Andrew.
Let's do July.
July
for the follow-up discussion about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
July
it is. All right. So, all right. Last thing on the agenda is the selectmen's. I'm muted. Yes. Sorry. Selectmen representatives to Shopsy. So I was on Shopsy, and then Chelsea got on Shopsy, but now Chelsea's plate is extremely full as well. So and again, I know people going back to work and everything else, it makes it tough. I mean, I'm happy to go back on Shopsy if, that's okay with the board. And I know, Andrew, I would love to sit down with you and talk about some things that we have to step into. Volunteering game people again. I mean, I would be happy to do Shopsy. We'll put it on the next agenda if the board is fine. I was on it prior to Chelsea getting on it. I would be happy to do it. So, but I would like to sit with you, Andrew. as well to find some things that, you know, are interesting to you, that even if it's something I would be happy to take off my plate to give to you, I'll just throw that out there. I would be happy to talk to you offline and see where we could best utilize the wonderful service that you
So then are we gonna vote on this right now, or are we just gonna?
Well,
have
Chelsea
an
hasn't
offline
done-
discussion on that?
Chelsea hasn't done a resignation yet. It'll be on the next agenda, but I just wanted the board's feedback on if they were comfortable with me going back on Chelsea, or if Mr. Wheeling.
Can I ask Ms. Jazinski a question?
Please. No.
Well, I can ask you a question, you may not answer it.
You have to come up.
When, oh, sorry.
Yeah. Good thing you wore a necklace. You look dressy.
It's a long way for a very simple question. When do you all typically meet?
On tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
Well,
On Wednesday
right.
mornings. Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m.
Okay, that's all.
So once a month.
Okay. All right.
That it?
Yeah, it's because we're not gonna vote tonight, so it gives me something to think about.
Sounds like a plan. So again, Marty, if you come up with some other thoughts on that, please feel free to let Mr. Purple know. So that being said, brings us down to number 8, public comment. Oh, look,
Man, you guys have hung in.
you guys are good. All right, Mr. Rose, step forward. I said your name, but if you could say your name and your address, Vanessa will unmute you. And
Oh, there's a Zoom. Okay, I could have done that. Hi, Howard Rose, 2 Bantry Road. First of all, thank you for being here. Thank you, especially for looking at the truck exclusion. I can't say I agree with every comment tonight, but I think that you're looking at it as a great step forward. I would encourage you to see the urgency of this. Please walk the road. Don't drive the road, walk the road. Don't take your kids with you, but walk the road. See the urgency of anything you can do to help us make this road safer is important. It may only seem like a couple trucks in both directions. And to answer your question, when there's a backup on 495, they come down Simorano, cut through, because that's the route Waze takes them as the cut through for everything. But please walk it. I have to admit, I've only done that recently. I've been here 6.5 years and I would never walk that road. And I did, and I was terrified. So please take the chance to walk it and pretend you're a kid walking to school and see that anything you can do. Unlike Parkerville, which I agree with you, it's the other side of the school, but it's twice as wide, it's straight, and there's sidewalks. You saw those pictures. This is a windy. It's scary to drive it. Just please walk it. Thank you on that. One other comment on a completely other subject, the noise bylaw. I would like you to consider not only having people from the town look at this, an acoustician. An acoustician, environmental acousticians. We have legal counsel that give our opinions and back up everything we do on our boards. These are people, this is what they do for a living. There's several of them around. There's one in Sudbury, there's one in Cambridge. I can give you a list if you really need one. But these are the people that do these, just taking bits and pieces from other towns aren't necessarily appropriate to, and we saw what came out of it. I've read the other one. Not only was it unenforceable, it was somewhat ridiculous because they just took snippets and didn't really know what they were looking at. There are experts that do this. If we have an amount of budget to do it, that it'd be frankly a big time saver, and will get us a document we can bring to town meeting that would actually A, be enforceable, and B, actually mean something. So I would ask you to consider that as well.
great, thank
And
you.
that's
So
it.
does that mean you're going to apply to be on the noise bylaw committee?
Unfortunately, my job is to put the noise back. So although I have experience with acousticians, they made it quiet and I would put all the noise back. So I don't really think you want me on that committee.
All right, thank you for your comments. I'm just enjoying delegating. So
That's
that's all
fine.
when I know.
Yep.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Mr. Rhodes. We appreciate it. Mr. Litt. Well, I will just say, Mr. Litt, welcome, and it's nice to see you in person.
Well, it's kind
Is that a list? Is that a list in your hand?
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Can I get my pen?
You didn't think you'd get away with not having me come and rescue you. So a couple of things.
Looks pretty small too.
The first is going back to your discussion on use of town email. You probably know that this has been something I've been pushing for many years. But I think it's important to try and find out what the barriers are to email use. I mean, I've been through a couple of iterations, and some of it is just people being stubborn and not wanting to change the way they are. But that's not the bulk of it. I mean, typically someone has a reason. And the kinds of reasons that we've run into in the past are things like my employer's firewall blocks access to the town email for their security reasons. And, you know, if I wait till I get home, then I miss stuff. Or, you know, my phone is provided by my employer and I'm not allowed to bypass that kind of protections. So I think I think it's important to continue to push it. I think to be successful, it's important to understand why it's not happening, not just say, you know, you've got to do it or else. I tend to get more cooperation that way when I do these kinds of things. The second thing on my list is I greatly miss the table that used to be there. For those of us who come with electronic devices and try and type, it really was easier. So it would be nice if I would find it. And the third thing, just another reminder, is I am baffled by why you have not made your ex officio appointment to the MTC. I mean, you have the employee, you have the committee, he's being asked, you know, to attend the committee meetings without having been appointed. It's not good for the committee, it's not good for him, it's not good for the town. Could we please make that happen? That's my list.
Wow, that was a short list. Thank you.
Well, you haven't seen the other side.
All right, Mr. Wood, thank you. Any other public comment? That being said, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right, we'll do roll call. Thanks. Roll call. Ms. Malinowski.
Aye.
Mr. Healy.
Aye.
Mr. Stivers.
Aye.
Mr. Dennington.
Aye.
Ratio, aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you for sticking with me. Have a great night.
Mr. Healy.